across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Idea what's going on. Oh, there we are. Good afternoon. Right on time with a slight satellite delay to the brain. Thank you to Ian. Back tomorrow afternoon between 1 and 4, but it's drive time for Tuesday. And the A-team, well, I have to say Jodie is still away. If you were listening to the show yesterday, she's been replaced for a couple of days by a gentleman who looks remarkably like Harry Potter. Yesterday, he managed to spell a woman's name Maureen, M-O-R-O-N, moron, which offended her, which was quite funny. We're improving, though. He's a good judge. He's a good man. So if you want to speak on the show today, phone young Harry. Just say this, Harry Potter, I presume. 0344 499 1000, the only number you need if you want to be on the show between now and 7 o'clock. Text us as ever, 87222, start your message with the word talk. So much to talk about. I said it to Ian, where do you start? Do you start with the fact that that idiot, Ed Miliband, has the front to come out and say that Labour will not be apologising for its handling of the winter fuel payment crisis. I mean, I remember reading about this when Rachel Reeves and Dreary Starmer brought this in, and I remember thinking, so you are saying that you will save £1.5 billion, despite the fact we send, what, 16 billion for the Chagos, and we send all this money abroad for international development. Interestingly, after her backtrack, where 9 million pensioners will quite rightly now get that, she's going to have saved 250 million quid. Nothing for a year of trauma. And actually, let's be honest, pensioners have suffered and several have died as a result of Labour's policy. The Front of the Sun today getting it spot on. It was insensitive, it was wrong. Surely she and Starmer should apologise to the British people. That's a serious story, as is the news that... I mean, I think it's really important, though, and I'm glad we're going to talk about it. Criticising religion should be exempt from harassment laws, a group of MPs will say. This is because in the last... I mean, blasphemy laws were what? They were banned in 2008 in England and Wales. A couple of people have been prosecuted, Hamit Cosson and Martin Frost, religiously aggravated public disorder. One guy was burning the Quran. What a bunch of MPs, cross-party MPs, are saying. You should be able to criticise, you should be able to have an opinion without being jailed. And we're back to that two-tier view. Would love your thoughts on that. Also, Greta, this is bloody brilliant. Greta Thunberg, that ridiculous child. Anyway, there we go. She, of course, been on the flotilla of hope off to Israel on the boat with several other activists, and she landed outside Gaza and promptly got picked up by the Israelis. They took her ashore, gave her a sandwich, did a picture of it. She says it's a publicity stunt. She's been deported. She's been deported and flown back, not on an EasyJet plane. We don't know what plane it is. We're not pointing the finger. But it got Ryan thinking, which is in itself quite a miracle. What would be the worst flight you've ever had, and with whom? Well, no, don't worry, all the people in the legal department. I'm not going to slag off airlines. What would be your worst? I mean, mine would be stuck in a cockpit with my mother-in-law, with her beard everywhere. I mean, that would be awful, wouldn't it? My mother-in-law, can you imagine her? She's only 4'1". Dreadful. What would be your worst flight, and with whom? 0344 499 1000. And I don't know if you listen to the legend that is Mike Graham every single day. If you don't, in the morning glory, 6 till 10, you should. He has this amazing feature, which is quite simply this: Migrant of the Day. An Iraqi asylum seeker avoided being removed from the UK, my friends, after claiming that he had a love affair with the wife of a powerful colonel in his home country. And if he was made to go back, they would seek retribution, and the love affair would be outed, and he would be treated in a very bad way. So he slept with somebody else's wife, and that's why he's getting to stay in the United Kingdom. These excuses become madder by the day. Now, 0344 499 1000. Overnight, you might have heard and read the news that our very own Dr. David Bull, who does an amazing job on Weekend Breakfast, is to be the new party chairman of Reform. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about all of it with the legend that is, and I can't believe that she decided to join me at the start of the show, our international editor, the legend that is Isabel Oakeshott. Good afternoon, Izzy. Let's get busy.
Can we talk about the flight thing? Because that's such a great topic of conversation. Honestly. Your worst flight. I mean, there are three that spring to mind, but not that long ago, I was on a flight sitting next to a guy that was clearly incredibly unwell. Oh. And he was snorting and like doing that whole kind of coughing and clearing his throat thing and sneezing every few seconds. And it was so revolting that I basically had to ask for, my daughter was actually sitting next to him. I had to quietly ask a stewardess whether my daughter could be moved. And I'm afraid I said that she's a very, very good athlete and she can't afford to get ill. And they were brilliant about it and moved her. I mean, how gross is that?
I know, but is it though? Is it as gross as finding yourself next to the hobgoblin that is Greta Thunberg on a relief flight back from Israel? I mean, I don't know what you make about this girl, and maybe I'm wrong to say it. Everybody has a right to an opinion, but honestly, I just want to tell her to shut up. Does she genuinely think that I love the Swedish government who said it's not our problem, you decided to go there? Who does she think she is, by the way? Does she think that single-handedly at the age of about 11 she's going to be able to cure the woes of the world? And again, a bit like the conversation I had with people yesterday about Dawn French, there's only one side to those people's views, aren't there?
Yeah, completely. And yeah, I mean, I think she genuinely thinks she can make a difference. I mean, in fairness to the girl, she massively elevated the whole cause of climate change. So,
yeah, but she went to Israel on a boat that was powered by diesel, for Christ's sake, Izzy. Let's get real.
Don't get me started. And then a load of Labour people kind of jumping on the bandwagon. You know, that absolute muppet Richard Burgon saying that she should be released. She's been captured. She should be released forthwith. These people, honestly, they really drive me mad.
Richard Burgon's one of those Jeremy Corbynites, isn't he? That's never been heard of since. I remember him. Yeah, he's a nightmare. So Greta deported. Thank God for that. Will her own country have I bet she'll end up here in a 4-star hotel. That's what'll happen. She'll get to France and grab a dinghy and get over here and get a free medical treatment. Honestly, and then there's that picture, you can see it on the screen right now, of her being given a sandwich, smiling like a child as she's given, I don't know what was in the sandwich.
She looks about 11, doesn't she? She looks about 11. The funniest thing
she says it's a publicity stunt. The Israelis are trying to make themselves look good. Oh, my God.
Well, I mean, I think her whole thing was obviously just a publicity stunt, and they've played right into her hands, I suppose, by capturing her, or as she puts it, taking her, kidnapping her, I think was the word she used. I mean, in a sense, this stunt couldn't fail because it was always bound to end in some drama of this sort, which just brings more attention to Greta Thunberg, which is what she wants.
Is it Thunberg or Thunberg?
Oh, I don't know.
Do we care?
I know, who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares?
So keep them coming, by the way. Isabel's already given you one about sitting next to a man who was really very ill. Who have you said, your worst ever plane journey and the worst ever person? We don't care about the airline. 0344 499 1000, text to 87222. As if he couldn't actually put his size 8 in a bigger pile of poo, Ed Miliband has done something today, Isabel Oakeshott, that even stopped me in my tracks. He says Labour will not and should not apologise for its handling of the winter fuel payment cut. He says that the original decision was understandable and that the Chancellor has done the right thing by backtracking to announce she was restoring the payment to approximately 3/4 of the people she'd taken it away from. So actually, in his mind, despite all the uncertainty for millions of pensioners, despite the fact that people lost their lives over the winter because of her stupidity, he's defending her. He's a goner as well. I reckon they've sent him out. Here's the theory for you. I reckon they've sent him out to defend her because they're both toast, mate.
Yeah, well, she won't be toast for a while, I don't think, just because of the politics of removing your Chancellor. I think his position is a bit more perilous. These politicians, they're weird, aren't they? Why is it so hard just to say sorry? You know, you might as well just say it. You know, sorry, we picked that up. It was a big mistake. You know, we just come in, we were trying to do the sensible thing. We were trying to, I don't know, balance the books, however you want to say it. We got it wrong. It's not the end of days to say that, but it's as if they fear the headlines that says, you know, in a humiliating climb down, Prime Minister last night apologised for the, you know, the hurt it had caused. You know, well, that's just 24 hours, isn't it? And then it goes away.
Harry Cole said that last week. Rather than let this thing just carry on, his experience would be that you should just damn well come out with it. And I said it yesterday about conviction politicians. How refreshing would it be if somebody just came out and, do you know what, I got it completely and utterly wrong. I was out of my depth. I did this wrong. It's being restored. Hand on heart. Let's move on. That's it. Couple of voice notes because you always galvanise my audience. Don't go anywhere. Gorgeous Ms. Oakeshott. This is Gaz on the winter fuel U-turn. You try saying that. Go.
When you opened the show and said, I want to talk about that idiot He left it wide open, mate. I didn't know if it were going to be Greta Thunberg, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, Ed Miliband. But yeah, it was Ed Miliband. But I want to talk about Rachel Reeves. She backed herself into a corner here, hasn't she? Because she's reinstated U-turned on the winter fuel allowance, saying that the economy's in good shape and they've fixed the foundations. So now if she comes back for tax rises, she can't.
I couldn't agree more. I think Richard III's out of the depth. Dave, on Greta being deported, go.
Mate, could you imagine if the Palestinians would have got hold of Greta, what would have happened to her? The IDF have saved their life.
It's a very interesting point, but you only hear one side of the story. While we're on this, and I know we flit around with you, but that's because I love having you on. You weren't on with us yesterday. Dawn French, that tweet over the weekend. I just want to put this to you, Isabel, right? She sarcastically talked about October the 7th. People will say in a mocking tone. She's loved by everybody. Allegedly, she came out. She said, I've taken it down. I didn't mean to cause outrage. This, by the way, was filmed. There was a Palestinian flag, no Israeli flag, because her apology was about both sides of the argument. Can you explain to me why we live in a country where Dawn French, who's worth millions, can make a mistake and be fine, and Lucy Connolly, a mother of one, can make a mistake and write something that are hurty words, and she's languishing in jail for 31 months, mate, because I don't get it.
Well, every day, as I go through the papers, I see more cases that I can't help comparing to Lucy Connolly. You know, there's an awful case in the papers today about an absolute nutcase, a sick nutcase, who tortured and killed 3 of his ex-girlfriend or girlfriend's pet cats. And he's not being jailed. You know, these cats, the police took it so seriously that the cats were exhumed to find out what they suffered. And yet this guy escapes jail. Now, some will say, oh, well, they're only cats. But people who can torture animals are people who can very, very soon move on to torturing human beings. And yet you've got Lucy Connolly, who has not literally hurt a fly.
Absolutely.
She may have said some stupid things. Is in jail for 3 years. I mean, really? What?
You do some amazing work, and one of the stories you brought to talk is an exclusive, and I want to talk about this. This is absolutely outrageous. Pin back your logos, drive time lot, because this is... I mean, I was reading about this morning. Several dangerous foreign crooks have escaped from under the noses of UK deportation staff. Tell us more, Isabel.
It's just unbelievable. So yesterday it emerged that one guy managed to break free as he was about to be deported. He was headed for India, and he managed to give the guards a slip before the plane took off and burst down the steps and onto the runway. There he is. Those of our listeners that are also watching can see him racing around the tarmac, causing chaos at Heathrow. It is the Home Office contractor Mighty, who are paid multi-millions to not let this happen, who are responsible for the series of blunders that went on there. They have said, they told Talk that they are carrying out an investigation, so they can't tell us too much more. But today and this morning on Mike's show, it emerged that this isn't the first time. And Mike interviewed a former Mighty worker, a guy called Gary Coston, who revealed that he was aware of a number of cases where the detainees had basically made a run for it, including one guy that made a run for it while he was en route to Somalia. The plane had touched down in Turkey, and according to Mike's interviewee, the guy did a runner. He did something like sort of burst through the roof of a toilet cubicle or something, and was never seen again.
New teeth, new hair, never be seen again. Never in Turkey. Sorted, isn't he?
Right. I hadn't even thought of that angle. I doubt we'd even need to do that. You know, those Mighty staff that you could see in that footage were having trouble even remotely giving chase to the guy because they were so unfit in one case, limping along. So I think taxpayers are entitled to ask, how many millions of pounds is Mighty being paid for this service? How many people are actually being deported? And how many of these deportations are they screwing up?
I mean, it's really interesting, isn't it? So if you looked at an overview, because every day I come here and I think, no, today's the day when we're going to sit here and we're going to compliment the United Kingdom. We spend every day talking about how this country is being flooded, and I know the left won't like it, but flooded with illegal migrants who are putting still further pressure on public services that mean that the average Briton is really struggling. And now, if we can get our heads out of our backsides and actually deport any, we employ to a company called Mighty. I would not call them Mighty. We pay them millions of pounds, ladies and gentlemen, on the Home Office contracts. They can't even take these people because they lose them. They lose them in Turkey. They lose them at Heathrow bloody airport, for God's sake. You know, in the old days when I was a kid, right? Britain was, you were proud. It's becoming embarrassing, is it not? In almost every single way.
It totally is to us that are immersed in all the bad stuff. But if I could just strike one positive note, you know, I'm talking to you now from the Middle East today. You know, when you say that you're from England, the reaction is still generally really, really positive.
Is it?
You know, people do look up to England still. You might be surprised. I know we just kind of get used to just thinking everything is going wrong, but they do also say, yes, it's got very dangerous, the crime is really bad. So I think perceptions of our country from around the world are really interesting. And when you're in the middle of it, in the thick of it, as we are, looking at all the bad stuff, it's easy to forget that we are still admired, we are still in many ways revered for our history, our culture, so much. Generally, probably.
You see, you're going to think I'm being cynical, and I don't mean to be, but all I do when I sit here during the week is listen to people who fight against everything that we've ever stood for, criticise everything that I believe made this country great, and we find ourselves governed by apologists who want to permanently put us down and apologise to the rest of the world. I'm sick to death of not being proud. Why aren't people proud of Great Britain? Because Great Britain's being screwed apart by loads of other... I mean, it's a fact.
It's a mess, but the good news is that not everybody realises it's a mess yet. So there is still chance to turn it around.
Calls, this is what happens to you. Just stay with me for 3 hours when you've got nothing else to do. Wolverhampton, Stephen, you're on Talk Drive. Isabel's with me. What you got?
Does Keir Starmer not think of his mother and his father? Did they ever was they ever cold in the harsh winters have gone by? Does Rachel Reeves not think of her mother, her father? Do they ever experience a really bad winter where there's frost?
I don't know, but I said it, Steve. I said it a year ago, and I'll say it again. I cannot believe that a party that must have known that they were going to be the next government, simply by how unpopular the Tories were not better prepared, better advised. This will go down, will it not, Isabel? This winter fuel U-turn. They can apologise. I don't think they will, because that's not politics, unfortunately. People will not forget what they did to pensioners, will they? They won't. Those 9 million pensioners, I'm telling you now, will never vote for the Labour Party again. They won't.
It's the worst of all worlds, because it was apparent to me as a political observer within the first sort of 24 hours of announcing that policy that they were going to have to U-turn on it. Instead, they left it so long that they suffered all the political damage, and then they'll probably get very little credit for actually U-turning, 9 months later. So an absolute communications and practical disaster for them. But I mean, there's so many other things about this government that they will go down for, whether it's Lucy Connolly, the so-called far-right thugs, net stupid zero, on and on it goes. So, yeah, I mean...
You sounded like a politician I have on the show occasionally when you said stupid net zero.
I think it's the first time I've said it, actually. And, when you came up with that phrase, this is Richard Tice, my partner I'm talking about here. I've got to declare an interest, a deputy...
Is that what you have to do, declare an interest in the Tice man?
Apparently I do. Anyway,
He's punching. He's punching. He might be heading for cabinet, but he's punching, let me tell you.
Well... I'll tell you, some days I have more of an interest than others. But when he first came up with net stupid zero, I thought it was a stupid slogan. But I have to admit, it seems to be cutting through. And, he is right. It is stupid.
Let's talk about Richard and reform, just to finish. We've talked about dangerous foreign crooks escaping deportation. How we can't get anybody to leave. How we've screwed all the pensioners, this government. But Greta Thunberg remains the #1 story. Reform, announcing yesterday that our colleague here at Talk, and delighted for him, Dr. David Bull, who of course presents Weekend Breakfast, is to be the new chairman of Reform. I haven't spoken to you. I mean, I went away on Wednesday having spoken to Zia. Really good chat, actually, on the show for half an hour. He then got very upset, allegedly, about the question about burqas, talked about the pressures, resigned in a fit of pique. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon and said that typifies Reform, Nigel's this, that and the other. Then back he comes and says, I've been, amazed by the power of people coming to me and saying I should stay. And then he's now going to head up another department dealing with Doge, a bit like Elon Musk. And yesterday, Dr. David Bull. Thoughts on the last 5 days of Reform? Because it's far from boring, is it, Isabel, to be fair?
You know what? I'm just feeling really good about it, actually. I love David Bull. I know you do too. David is such a people person, and I know he's going to do a completely fantastic job going around the country, talking to all the volunteers that work so hard, trying to get the Reform message out. And I watched the press conference today, and I watched once again Nigel Farage. And I don't want to sound like a fangirl here, because I will criticise when criticism is due. And it was obviously not ideal to have that bump in the road with Zia. But I watched Nigel Farage field 22 questions from the media, and they ranged so widely, everything from the burqa issue to are you too centrist or are you too far to the right? Some frankly ridiculous questions from the usual lefty suspects. He did it so brilliantly, and I would challenge anyone from any of the other parties to actually put in a performance like that in front of the media.
And also what you said about honesty. We started with Ed Miliband. We'll finish it with him in relation to Nigel Farage, because I don't care if a politician messes up. I just want honesty and conviction. I'm along the Trump lines of, you can mess up, upset people. If you set out on a plan, do what you say you're going to do. I'll say this about David Bull, and I agree, this great orator and communicator. When he didn't win a seat, and he left, demoted, whatever you want to say, he kept his nut down, and he's been staunchly supportive from the back seats of wherever for Reform, and I think he'll do a fantastic job, and I think that everybody who cares about that movement should wish David the very best of luck, Isabel. That's what I think. Great to have you on. You say you're in the Middle East. Have the lights gone out? It's gone a bit dark, love. Haven't you paid your bill?
100%. I keep thinking, when is this going to wrap up? Because the sun's just gone down and it's gone really dark in the room.
Oh, to have sun. We've got smog over wherever. Lovely to speak to you. Thank you. Really appreciate it as ever. Talks international editor, the amazing Isabel Oakeshott, 424. We're live across the UK. What do you want to talk about? There is so much stuff going on today. Greta Thunberg's been deported, which got us to ask the most important question on Talk today. What's the worst flight you've ever been on, and with who? 87222, start your message with the word Talk. This is Drive Time.
is unacceptable, absolutely right. But you have to remember, hotels are only booked when the government doesn't have adequate accommodation that it's provided for asylum seekers. And let's be clear about it. The law says, the Refugee Convention and our local domestic law puts a legal obligation on the government to provide basic housing, and quite often it's shared. And also, asylum seekers don't get a choice of where they live.
Well, look, you can't put out 90% of a fire. If you do that, it just burns back. And that's really what Israel is dealing with. It has to win over this jihadi menace because they've said themselves that they're going to do October the 7th again and again and again, so long as they can. The only way to solve that problem is to take them out, to obliterate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
4:28, Monday. No, it's not Tuesday afternoon. Where's that day gone? We're live across the UK and they have free speech and common sense. This is JK. Thanks for all your messages. They centre around one thing mostly, which is Greta Thunberg, who got on this boat with a bunch of activists to go to Gaza. It was diesel-powered. That in itself is ironic and strange. They got picked up by the Israelis. Shame they didn't buy Hamas, several people saying, but there we go. Looked after by the Israelis and sent back to France, deported, which led Brian, who spends a lot of time working out creatively what should come next, to say, what would be the worst thing, who would be the worst person you go on a flight with? Graham Pack says, I look forward to Greta Thunberg persuading Hamas to become net zero, or is that just blah blah as well? Jez, I've never had a bad flight, but I'd rather chew glass than sit next to Ed Miliband for any amount of time, says Rachel. Interesting. Brad says, Who would I hate to sit next to? Can you imagine Ed flipping Davey? It'd be like trying to have a conversation with Mr. Tumble. Mr. Tumble used to have the dressing room next door to me in Manchester. No comment. Hello to George Baker. It's too long to read, but thank you very much indeed. Liam's in Warrington. Jez, Labour MPs must think we're stupid. We've got short memories. My MP has posted on social media saying how happy she is that there has been a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance after she voted to scrap it a month ago. I will not forget, says Liam. Couldn't agree more. Jill says, if the government is now admitting that the winter fuel allowance policy was wrong, then surely it was wrong last year and the government should pay last year's allowance as well. What a great point that is. So you've apologised and admitted that it's wrong. Well, you haven't apologised, because Ed Miliband, I don't know if you lot have heard, he said that we shouldn't apologise for anything. We're flitting between government fuel and Greta Thunberg. Steve's in East Yorkshire, which in itself is quite brave. So Greta Thunberg was kidnapped by the IDF. She should be grateful she wasn't bloody kidnapped by Hamas. Natasha says, I'm with you, Jez. I don't think there was anyone I could find more irritating or idiotic than that Starmer, and then along came Greta Thunberg. She's not getting a good publicity this afternoon. Good afternoon, Jezza, says Dennis Adshead. I hope I've got that right. Dennis Adshead. What a great name. He says, Greta Thunberg went on a pleasure cruise around the Mediterranean on a diesel-powered boat. Israel dumped Greta onto a flight to France. All this carbon dioxide being plunged into the atmosphere. Ecological genocide. Won't someone please think of the planet? Have a great show, sir, says Dennis. Hello to Keith Alderson. Jeremy, on the winter fuel payment subject, what a dreadful indictment of this bloody country that our pensions are so poor that we have to give top-ups to our elderly in the winter. What an absolutely true point that is. Christina's in Spain. Oh, there you are. Rub it in. I'm in London. Love you, Jez. But the worst flight experience for me will be a long-haul flight sat next to a twittering man going on about the fact that he's 60 next year. Great. And finally, Graham from Bushy. You know it. It's the place I was conceived. I look forward to Greta Thunberg persuading Hamas to become net. Yeah, we've done that. 87222. Start your message with the word talk. Oh, Craig, this was a worst flight. Voice note, go.
I would not like to be stuck on a flight from the UK to Australia with Keir, Lamy, Rachel Reeves, Ed Miliband discussing net zero.
Brilliant. My wires come out again. I'm going to have an absolute crisis today. Never mind, there we go. Right, listen, it's very rare that you see a politician, and I don't mean it, this is a compliment to my next guest, who is on his own. The only London Assembly member who represents Reform UK is the redoubtable Alex Wilson, and we say a very good afternoon to you, sir. How are you?
Very well, thanks, Jeremy. Good afternoon.
I watch you putting questions to that odious git, Sadiq Khan, who refuses to even look at you, who refuses to even answer you. And I look at you sometimes and I think, oh, bless. But then I look at you again and I think, you're loving every minute of this, aren't you, Alex Wilson?
I am. I mean, it's been a really interesting year since I got elected, and part of the job is very serious. It's looking at really important issues that affect Londoners on a day-to-day basis. Crime out of control on our streets, various issues with TfL. You might have seen our campaign that we launched yesterday, looking at fare evasion, and we're going to be looking at graffiti and other issues like that as well. And housing, all these issues that he's failing on. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer thinks that Sir Sadiq deserves a knighthood, as he's been now given.
Don't get me on that. Let's talk about London on the back of what I think is the most humiliating U-turn for the Labour Party. And there are many governments, let's make the point, who have made U-turns in the past. But for many of us here, certainly, Alex, it would be a lot better if they just came out and said, we've made a mistake and moved on. But we've got Ed Miliband this afternoon saying we shouldn't have to apologise for this. She's done the right thing. But there were people who lost their lives. There were pensioners who suffered massively. What's the reaction in London to this?
Well, it's absolutely humiliating for the government to do this U-turn. They've only done it because of political pressure, because of those local election results, just over a month ago, where, I mean, I was out campaigning in various places up and down the country, knocking on doors, and it really was a huge issue. It's kind of symptomatic of the way that this Labour government has lost touch so very quickly. We all knew, well, we all thought that a Labour government wouldn't be that great, obviously, otherwise we'd have voted for them. But the wheels have come off so much more quickly than anyone could possibly have expected. I think it took, 9 years for the shine to come off Blair. It took nine months, possibly even 9 weeks, for the same to happen with Starmer. And today's, this U-turn on the fuel payment is absolutely symptomatic of that, and but also humiliating. And perhaps a wider issue even than the winter fuel payment is the humiliating effect that Rachel Reeves's budget overall has had. We saw the job figures out today, biggest fall in payroll since the pandemic on a monthly basis, meaning a cumulative total of 276,000 jobs have been lost since Rachel Reeves's budget. That is on her hands, and she needs to apologise for that every bit as much as she needs to apologise.
She's out of her depth, Alex.
What does it say on her CV today? She claims to have been an economist. She wasn't. Clearly, she's not right for the job. And if Starmer had any courage, he would be replacing her.
Well, I sort of said this yesterday, and people said that they're inextricably linked. That's the issue now, isn't it? The ideology is a joint one, and if he gets rid of his child, I don't think she'll last. And that's me being honest. I think that he will defend himself by getting rid of her. But yeah, you're right. We've got a government that refuses to accept that that was political suicide. I would see that as their poll tax moment. I don't care what anybody tells me, and I don't think that will be forgiven by 10 million pensioners. Let's turn the camera, if we can, excuse the pun, onto your party. And I'm going to be very honest. We've spoken before. People know that I was a Tory who voted Reform last time because I was so hacked off. But I have had concerns recently, and I want to put these to you. We just talked about the news that Dr. David Bull, our colleague here at Talk, is to be the new chairman. I interviewed Zia Youssef last Tuesday. By the time I'd gone away for 4 days and come back, he'd resigned, rejoined, blah, blah, blah. There are people who will say that... And I want to get an answer from somebody who's there fighting on the shop floor for what he believes is right. There are people who will say that there is undoubtedly a trend of people who fall out with Nigel Farage, who cannot maybe hack working with somebody who is the way he is, which is totally focused, Trump-esque if you like. He's got a vision, he's got an idea. This is how he's going to do it. We look at the Rupert Lowe thing, we look at Zia Youssef, we wonder about this, that and the other. There's a lot of people, this is what I want to say, in this country, millions, who are putting their faith in Nigel Farage and people like you. Can you pay them back? Do you believe that David Bull, Richard Tice, Nigel Farage and all the others that have come on board will be able to offer the British people a real alternative?
Absolutely. And I think the fact that Zia has come back now in a slightly different role shows that wasn't about any kind of personal fallout. It was Zia was feeling exhausted with the huge amount of work that he's done over the last 11 months on multiple fronts, and was hugely successful in getting the branch structure up and running, getting the...
But Alex, we're friends. Was it because he was hacked off about the burqa comment that Sarah Puchin, the question that she asked, and he got abused on social media? I'm not having a go at him or you, I'm just asking the question. Most people would assume that was the reason, right?
I think that probably had something to do with it, we'll be honest. But Sarah's open to debate. As Nigel said at the press conference today, it's not party policy. It's open to debate. We'll see where that goes. But fundamentally, Nigel is building a team that is going to take the party forwards towards that next general election. And David has been with Brexit Party since the beginning. Obviously served alongside Nigel as an MEP as did Richard, and has been with us ever since, and been with the party longer than I have. And I think he's a fantastic choice for chairman. The role is changing. It's going to be very much focused on being a very visible media spokesman, which obviously David is very good at, as you know from the work that he's done on your channel, and but also really energising the membership, because we've now got this huge membership, and it's vital that we harness that, because elections now are going to be won or lost on the ground.
I'll tell you one thing that I know about David Bull, which would inspire me, and there have been, some of the media stuff yesterday is just ridiculous, but he passionately believes in reform, and he believes in the things. He's very principled, and he's very straight in terms of what he says and how he says it. And I think you're right. I think it's all well and good. See, maybe David Bull is the right person for that reason, because the party, however Richard Tyson's a mate of mine, but then everybody talks about Farage. The problem with that is that when you have to devolve responsibility, or a press conference or a message or whatever, everybody needs to be batting on the same wicket. And I think that what David will bring is a broadcasting professionalism, and I believe that he will appeal absolutely to those members, and that can be a good thing. But my point is this: there are critics who will say Zia Youssef resigned, Rupert Lowe resigned. This bubble's about to burst. But then you look at the Scottish result the day after Zia Youssef resigned. Nobody actually gives a toss, because I believe most people in this country are going, we need change, for God's sake, and it can be flawed, and it can make mistakes, and it can trip itself up occasionally. But if it tells us what it's going to do and we believe it, we'll vote for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the opportunity that we've got, we talked about how quickly the wheels have come off the Labour government, and that's happened while people's memories are still very fresh about what happened with the Conservatives and the promises they've broken during their 14 years in government. And that creates a huge opportunity for a new party like us to talk about what we want to do, get that attention, and we've got to make those commitments, and then we've got to stick with them. We've got to deliver in a way that the other parties haven't, and that's a huge kind of burden and obligation, but it's a challenge that we're really, really up for. Nigel is building the team. We've obviously got an additional MP now with Sarah from the Runcorn and Helsby by-election. If future by-elections come along, we'll be fighting to win those as well, and also want to make use of the the county council leaders that we've had elected and our two mayors. We will see a broader base of party figures being put out there to do media, just like I'm doing now, and you will see as we get closer and closer to the general election what a reform team would look like if we are in that fortunate enough position to win the election. There's a long way to go. 4 years is a very long time in politics. Weeks a long time in politics, they say. 4 years, very, very long time. But we've taken a huge step forwards a month ago with those local election results, and I think today we've taken another huge step forwards by appointing David as the chairman. I think he's going to be absolutely fantastic. I've known him since the beginning of my involvement in the party. I've been an election agent for him in one of the elections that he stood. I think he's a really, really solid, sensible, sound person. He knows his stuff, and he's a really excellent communicator.
We wish him and everybody luck. I can't let you go without getting a reform comment on the main news story of the day, Alex, and it's not don't look terrified. Greta Thunberg has got on a boat to change the world's opinion about Israel and Gaza and everything else. Today she's been deported by the Israelis. She's been put on a flight back to France. I've had a lovely message from somebody saying, great to see the Israelis threw Greta back in economy. She was at the back of the plane next to the bog, exactly where she belongs. I personally am sick to death of these activists jumping on whatever bandwagon they can. I don't think they do anybody any good. What's your take on Greta? She should go back to school, shouldn't she?
Well, I think she's a little bit beyond school age now, but
doesn't look it.
It's great to see that you can actually stop a boat in a body of water and return the invaders.
You have just done what Liz says. Jez, if bloody Israel can deport Greta and co to France, why the hell can't we do the same with all the illegal migrants who arrive on boats? Absolutely. Alex Wilson, you're a legend. Keep taking on that dreadful con man. Alex Wilson, the only Reform Assembly member in the London Assembly. What is it, 19 minutes to 5 o'clock? You want to be on? It's very simple. 0344 499 1000. It's on the screen. You can do a WhatsApp voice note to Ryan, or you can send us a text, 87222. Start your message with the word talk.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 17 minutes to 5 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. Harry Cole, the legend, is here from 5 o'clock. In a minute, Rakib Hassan, a guy who wrote an amazing article, Bringing back blasphemy laws would only be bad for Muslims. There's a big outrage about that today. Just a few texts. Hello to Madge. Mark in Northants. A mate of mine was on some budget airline because he's tight. They had to land because short on fuel. Then the crew went round begging passengers for money. You're joking. My God, I don't believe it. Liz, we've done yours. Hello to Terry in Darwin. He said, Darwin, have you been to Darwin? That's quite depressing. I'm joking. I wouldn't even like to be on the same plane as Keir Starmer. Never mind sat next to him. I'd feel really down the whole way. I don't blame you. One of the stories that's in the newspapers today, it's an interesting one, is criticising religion should be exempt from harassment laws, a group of MPs of all parties will argue, amid mounting allegations that police are arresting protesters for blasphemy. Now, the laws of blasphemy were they were banned. I think it was abolished in about 2008 in England and Wales, but two recent prosecutions, and we've covered them here on Talk, over people burning the Quran and insulting Islam, have resulted in claims that the law is being revived by police using public order offences. At the end of the day, it's about free speech, it's about being able to have an opinion. I guess the question in layperson's terms is, if one insults, criticises a certain religion, are you more likely to be prosecuted than if you criticise another religion? That doesn't seem fair in any which way. Rakib Hassan, lovely to have you back on Talk Drive. How are you?
I'm very well, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm great. Criticising religion should be exempt from harassment laws. I guess you'd agree with that?
No, listen, I'm a religious social conservative, and I think that Britain is a land of considerable religious freedoms, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But part of that contract, where you have the freedom to practice your own faith, is also taking on the responsibility, accepting the fact that not everyone is going to feel the same way about your faith, and that involves accepting negative views and criticisms. And I think that criticism of religious doctrines, religious ideology, now of course we don't want to see discrimination, intimidation, harassment and violence towards a particular group of people on the grounds of their faith, but I do think criticising religious ideology, that is a cornerstone of British liberal democracy, and it's integral to freedom of expression, and it shouldn't be undermined.
Couldn't agree more. And the point I guess we're getting with this story today, and the reason that these MPs want to step in and protect free speech on religion is, and it wouldn't be unfair, and I'll tread as carefully as I can, it would seem, would it not, that if you criticise certain religions in this country, you're more likely to get your collar felt than if you actually end up criticising other religions. And there we get the split and the two-tier approach, and frankly, the anger and the frustration that many people feel about our society in general going forward.
Well, I think it's safe to say, and I say this from a British Muslim perspective, I think that certain communities are more sensitive to criticisms of their faith compared to others. And I think that the reason why I don't support the reintroduction of blasphemy laws, Jeremy, as you mentioned there, they were formally abolished across England and Wales back in 2008, is because I think that it may well reinforce the perception that Islam is ultimately provided with preferential treatment under British law. I think they would provide that impression. I think that'd be hugely counterproductive for British Muslims, because I think that could actually contribute towards anti-Muslim hostility and suspicions.
So presumably the police's approach is that if you're criticising Islam and you're showing Islamophobia, you are then in a way inciting an anti-Muslim feeling. Do you believe there is an anti-Muslim feeling in this country?
Oh, I think there's anti-Muslim prejudice exists in Britain, but I don't think that really changes the fact that I still believe that Britain is one of the best places to live as a Muslim. If you look at across the Islamic world, there are countries which are characterized by social instability, sectarian conflict, largely underdeveloped economies. Now, of course, you can make improvements from a community relations perspective, but I make this point yet again, that if you look at the religious freedoms that British Muslims enjoy, that includes British Muslims criticising other religions. They have the freedom to proselytise and in efforts towards spreading their own faith. That includes challenging the doctrines of the Trinity and Incarnation in Christianity. includes challenging idol worship under religions such as Hinduism. And some devout Christians and Hindus might even find that to be blasphemous. So you're opening a bit of a can of worms there. So I think the key point is, if we want to protect religious freedom, I think you should also protect the right to blaspheme.
Do you believe, I mean, there was an article, and I hope you don't mind me raising it with you. If you do, tell me, but there was an article, a story over the weekend that said in 10 to 15 years there will be more Muslims living in the United Kingdom than people who have started living in the United Kingdom. I don't know if you read the article, you heard the article. I have many fears as I turn 60. They're all going, saying it again. For my kids, I don't actually give a toss the colour of your skin, your creed, your religion or whatever. We would all like to think, would we not, that we can all live in the same world in a happy way. I think the frustration for many people, and I'd like more Muslim leaders to be more vocal about this, is that there are extreme elements to every religion. Unfortunately, what happens is the press and publicity will say it's this, it's that. Do you believe that for the sake of integration and for want of a better phrase, better social cohesion, Muslim leaders could be more vocal and criticise certain segments of their own people who are causing trouble? I don't know why there is so much silence sometimes. It's just a genuine question from me as a bloke.
No, absolutely. I think that voices which are what I would consider to be more sensible, more productive and more constructive, they've actually been sidelined by the British state. I think what's happened under our multicultural model is that the more vocal, identitarian and I'd say tribalistic voices, they've been given a place at the table because they're more assertive and, dare I say, more aggressive in terms of articulating their views. And quite often, this is ultimately focused on matters of discrimination, Islamophobia. And I think that's a problem because it's ultimately framing British Muslims as victims, when actually I think many British Muslims do a great deal of good in the country. And I think that there's many British Muslims who are also, in my view, they see that Islamist extremism on their doorstep. Why
don't they speak out about it? Why don't they speak out about it?
I think that there's also fears in terms of facing intimidation.
Yeah.
I think that the reality is that there is that sectarianism which exists in British Muslim communities, and I think that needs to be challenged, and I think that needs to be recognised by our law enforcement institutions as well. But I think that because of political correctness, I think that in some institutions they're very fearful to engage with these issues. But I think that if we're very serious about social cohesion and public security, there's no hiding. And I think that
you would understand very clearly, because Ryan's waving at me, but you know, you would understand with the Rotherham things. Those were British Pakistani men who for 8 years were not brought to justice. They were raping young girls. This is a fact. This isn't made up. And the police came out and said, we were worried to be more heavy-handed or quicker with our investigation because it would have caused social unrest. That doesn't wash with a lot of people, Raki. That's what I'm saying. That you can't come out with that. That's going to stir trouble, isn't it, in the long run?
In the long run, it's going to make the situation a lot worse. And one thing I'll say is that public security should never be sacrificed on the altar of political correctness and identity politics. It's remotely it's simply unacceptable. Public should be doing a lot better.
I love having you on, mate. I'm sorry to cut you off. He's a top man, social policy analyst, and nearly got the right policy analyst. Rakib Bashan wrote a great article last week bringing about blasphemy laws would only be bad for Muslims. Thank you very much indeed, Rakib. This is Talk Drive.
Yeah, and if you think about the actual cost of this, today Rachel Reeves is saying that the overall cost of the winter fuel payment from making it universal to now making it means tested is going to be £450 million a year. Now, that is a tenth of what we're currently spending on migrant hotels. It is an absolutely enormous sum going basically going to the wall every single year. Meanwhile, we're being told to tighten our belts and other things. And so I think that there is just an overwhelming sense in this country now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
5 to 5, JK on Drive. If you want to be on 0344 499 1000, as ever, the only number you need, or text to 87222. Do please start your message with the word talk. To the phone lines, Graham is in Kent. Graham, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, Jeremy. And I'd like to say this country's drowning like a dog in a river at the present moment in time, and reform seems to me to be the only way out. Now, what I think Starmer will do, he'll start giving money away, or already talking up the economy now towards the end of his tenure, and people shouldn't be allowed to actually sort of accept this type of behaviour. But what I will say is that I think we've seen in America is that we've got a lot of opposition. If reform will come in, some of the left wing have embedded themselves in our institutions, and I think they will get civil disobedience like we see in America if they try to to take people out of this country who shouldn't be here. And I do worry they really have got to have a strong ethos to get through that type of thing and to battle away, because I think the extreme left wing does exist in this country and will misbehave. We've seen it when they've cut the tyres of coaches that are supposed to be taking people out in Peckham. And I wonder what you think about this.
Listen, I couldn't agree more. I've sat here for many months and said about Donald Trump, and there are many things about the orange man baby that I don't like, but what I do like, and I say it on a daily basis, is that there's a man who put in front of the American people what he believes needs to be done. They voted for him, and come hell or high water, he's going to do it. Look at what is happening in LA. He's sending in the National Guard. People are appalled. These poor migrants. No, the American people want the migration problem sorted. We need the same here. There's an amazing article. I'm going to talk about it after the news at 5 with Harry Cole. He's written it. It goes online at 5 in the Sun, and it'll be in tomorrow's paper. It's really interesting. He's done an interview with the former Cabinet Secretary, Sir Simon Case, who says, and this is interesting, listen to this, Britain is teetering on a debt crisis, crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration while facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians are powerless to fundamentally change our country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and bureaucracy. And I think that's the point. I sit here every day and I think, Nigel Farage, Richard Tyson, they'll get there, they'll say that, and they say to me, yeah, but the thing is, the civil service run this country. Somebody, somewhere, has to have the balls to say, I'm going to change that, and I'm going to take the flack, I'm going to take the hits, I don't care how unpopular, I don't care what legal ramifications it means, very much like Trump, I believe this country needs changing, and the only way it's going to change it, and you're not going to go down in history with a legacy. You might die, you might burn after 5 years, Thatcher-esque, right? But if you believe in it, which is what I want to hear from somebody, I'm with you. I think it's utterly disgraceful we can't stop the boats. We can't stop giving handouts to people who don't want it. I think it is appalling that we apparently are not in control of our own destiny, that people who we pay to be civil servants can take our elected government to court. I think the whole thing's a shambles, mate. I think it's an embarrassment. And I think there's, not just a few far-right people, as we've been called in the past, but actually there's millions of like-minded people in this country who are going, do you know what? This is not good enough anymore. This is not right. Something has to give, Gray. I really believe that.
Yeah, you're quite right. And I think Trump's been helped because when they change administrations, they dredged a swamp of people working in there, that could be their civil service or whatever, but we can't do that in this country.
Why can't we do Sack them all. Why not?
I don't know. And they, Reform, have got to deal with this type of situation because there will be significant opposition to them.
Of course there'll be opposition, but there's always opposition to anything that fundamentally needs to be done and that you believe in. That's what I want in my politician, and I'm sure Harry Cole will tell me after the news that actually that's not possible in the United Kingdom. Well, I think anything's bloody possible. I think it's about time this country did something to look after itself. Great to have you on, Gray. Whereabouts in Kent, me old son?
See you later, old son. See you later.
Brilliant. Whereabout in Kent? See you later. Brilliant. Right, don't laugh, Amy. Almost 5, as I promised you. Editor-at-large of The Sun. I was going to make a joke. Just a large editor, really. Hey! My boy's on next. Harry Cole live and exclusive on Drive. If you want to put a question to Harry or you want to be on, 0344 499 1000. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. Start your message with the word talk. But we, my friends, will head towards the news at 5. I'm off for a wee. I'll see you in 3.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 5 o'clock. We're live across the UK. Talk Drive for Tuesday, and we are joined by the newly ennobled Harry Cole, editor-at-large, The Sun. What does that mean?
What do you want it to mean?
Editor at lunch. Editor with largesse.
Editor out, out in the world.
So proud of you.
Breaking stories, roaming around.
I feel like you're the illegitimate son I probably did have. How old are you? Yeah, I could be your dad, couldn't I?
Oh, God, that's a terrifying thought,
Why is it terrifying? You've taught me so much. You're so cultured. I don't know quite what happens.
I've seen you dance this, so...
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not good. You've seen a lot. Harry Cole, the reason that we wanted you in, there's so much to talk about, but 5 o'clock is important because you've written this amazing article which goes online at 5 in the Sun. And in the paper tomorrow.
Paper tomorrow, YouTube. We're going to talk about it now. You can get it wherever you want. You'll find it.
On the latest episode of Nevermind the Balance, you sat down with Simon Case. This is really interesting, peeps. The former Cabinet Secretary and most senior civil servant in the UK. It is available now on YouTube. And I gave this out before. Britain is teetering on a debt crisis crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration whilst facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians are powerless to fundamentally change the country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and bureaucracy. That phrase, the blob, is not going away, is it?
This was one of the most remarkable interviews I've ever conducted. This is the man on the inside. He's worked in Spook World, he's worked in Buckingham Palace, he's worked in Number 10. He was the most powerful civil servant in the country, and he sounds like a talk listener.
Does he? Listen, but this is... Let's have a look, have a listen to what Simon Case, the most powerful civil servant, said about the so-called blob. And just before you play, it's exactly what Harry says. He would be your archetypal talk listener. Have a watch.
Did you say this when you're on the inside?
I'm not going to go into what I said on the inside, but I'll tell you what I think, and you can draw your own conclusions. You can't have elections where no matter who you vote for, you just keep getting the same answer.
Yes.
So you have to change this question. We have to put... we love to kind of rib and tear strips off our politicians. Actually, I think we go too far on that. These are people who put themselves forward to try and make this country a better place, and they deserve our support for doing it. And what we should be trying to do is make sure that whatever platform they stand on, whoever you vote for, if they come into power, they've got the space to do it. And a lot of that, for me, is about stripping back the powers that have been handed to all sorts of... not all of them are quangos, but all sorts of interest groups, and bring these back into
what we might call the blob. Do you recognise that?
I used to be in charge of a big bit of the blob. You are, and as you probably know, I hate that phrase because I think it's unbelievably dehumanising.
Yes.
But I do understand
where it's coming from.
That there is this kind of faceless, to many people and many politicians, faceless sort of set of organisations that seems to be holding power no matter what you want to do.
How has it come to that point? He doesn't like the phrase the blob. It's an amazing... I mean, I can't wait to read it. I can't wait to watch it. But here's the thing, right? Simon Case was the most powerful civil servant in the United Kingdom. Begrudgingly, even he admits. He said it. Too many quangos, too many committees. How has power got to a point where unelected officials are controlling what democratically elected MPs want to do?
It's a mess that's evolved into this, but he does actually sort of reserve some blame for politicians of all stripes. And a little bit like the setup of the OBR, which is, politicians come in, they realise that actually they don't run the country. They can't, the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, has far more power over setting budgets, setting spending reviews, which we're going to get tomorrow from Rachel Reeves. This is an unelected quanger that's been handed the sort of power to mark politicians' homework. Now, that was set up in a political stunt by George Osborne when he was trying to wind up Gordon Brown, saying, oh, we'll never do what Gordon Brown did again. We won't cook the books like he did. We're going to hand all this power to this person. And each government that comes in, they give a little bit more power away to a different bit of the state, a different faceless bureaucrats, as Simon Case said there. And then you get layers up and layers up and layers up and layers up, and eventually you get to the stage where actually politicians come in, they go, right, ha-ha, we're here, we're in Number 10, we're going to pull all these levers, think Liz Truss, think Rishi Sunak, think Boris Johnson in the pandemic. Right, I'm in charge, what are we going to do? Pulls the levers, nothing happens.
Right, so to just treat me like the idiot that I am, that is fundamentally wrong in democracy. If you are voting, just hear me out one second, if you're voting for people and you're putting your trust in them to go and form a government and implement changes that you have voted for and believe should happen, how is it, and this is not going away, I don't think, from the British people, that we now have these and it's sort of accepted, Harry, oh, well, that's just the way it is. If you become Prime Minister, you can't do bugger all because these people are holding the levers. These people need to have this power taken away from them.
Exactly, and the most powerful member of Sir Blob, Sir Simon Case, the head of the civil service, he hates the phrase, but he accepts the criticism.
Is he still with the civil service?
No, he's left 6 months ago, and now he's free to talk, which is why he's on our show saying these sort of things. He is saying, there's a very small window of opportunity to get a grip on this, because look where we are now. Tories promised change, nothing happened. Labour promised change, nothing's happened. Deeply unpopular government. Nigel Farage possibly could come in and promise change, but he's going to be hit by the same problem.
So let's talk about that. So Richard
Yeah.
Tice will come on this show and he'll say, day one, if we form a government, we are going to take a scythe to the 10,000 blob-sized civil service in Whitehall.
Well, how are you going to do that?
Sack them.
Well, exactly.
I'm asking you, is that not possible?
Well, this is what Case warns. He says, look, people come in, they've tried to do these reforms, but the sort of blob is in itself, you know, self-protective. What you need to do is actually all politicians of all stripes all have to agree that something needs to be done. And there's a very chilling warning in here. He says if something's not done soon, if growth still remains sluggish because you can't change the economic sort of weather, if debt isn't tackled because we're still borrowing and spending and borrowing and spending, and if politicians continue to let down the public, we're going down a very dark path in this country. And he says he's a pessimist, but he says we're planning for the worst. You must always plan for the worst.
It's really interesting.
And a stage of life where...
I find it really difficult, actually, on this show when we're talking about this, because you have to be careful about what you say, right? I am not saying that the British people are going to take to the streets. Just want to make that point. But you can absolutely understand and believe there is an increasing real anger, whether it's about migration or whether it's about debt, whether it's about an armed force that is completely impotent, whether it's about threats of disorder all over the country, knife crime, all these sorts of things. I can see a point where the British electorate take action. I really can, mate, because it's not getting any better.
I'll read you this quote from him. He said, look, there have been moments in our history when we've had political violence, but we're starting to see that people expressing their frustrations in that way. We're starting to see that again. It's already happening. Look at Northern Ireland overnight. Riots. Look at what happened in Southport last year. And he said we should all of us stop and listen and think, what is happening? Something is going on here. Something is happening that we should all be paying attention to before it's too late. And I just think if this is the most powerful Mandarin, formerly in Mandarin, imagine what he was saying on the inside. If this is what he's saying on Never Mind the Ballots, if this is what he's saying to, you know, publicly, can you imagine what he must have been saying and thinking? The way the direction this country's going in.
Is that why he left?
Right, he left. He left for personal reasons, and you know he'd been around for a very long time. He'd been through COVID. He did the handover of power between Keir Starmer. You know the sort of changing of government. He worked at the palace for many years, but I think he is going to be one of the more thoughtful voices emerging. That you know this is a man that has seen it all, and if he is saying this, we should really all sit up and listen.
What about answers? Interviewing him, it's going to be fascinating to watch it. What does he believe the answer to this? I'm trying to find the right word. There is an increasing fear in this country that something is afoot. There's no doubt that's true. What does he see as the answer to that?
So on immigration, it was really interesting because he talked about the fact that he watched this eureka moment that happened with every single politician that came in. Every new Home Secretary, every new Prime Minister would suddenly go, oh, actually, this isn't just a pull this lever answer. This has got to be done across the board. There's no single person. Who's in charge of immigration? You'd think it's the Home Secretary.
Well, I get an immigration minister from day one.
But it's not. Well, they've got an immigration minister, but he just runs Border Force. But it's actually the Treasury, or it's the Prime Minister, you know, or it's the Migration Advisory Council. There's no single person that's involved. There's no responsibility.
But there should be, shouldn't there?
A massive streamline.
There should be.
Yeah, of course there should be. And the problem is, we had a really interesting chat, and there's one of the most interesting bits of the interview. We talked about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he said Donald Trump is a politician, like him or loathe him, agree with him or disagree with him. You cannot dispute that he came in and he said, I'm going to do this at the election, I'm going to do that at the election. And he came in and he did it. Whether you agree with it or not.
Whether you're legally attacked, you're attacked in the newspapers and the media, he is going to stick to what he believes in.
What Donald Trump has and what he got this time, Donald Trump 2.0, that he didn't do last time round, is he managed to streamline executive power. He got on top of it. He said, right, I've got all these, the power, the American executive, the White House has a lot more power than number 10.
Yeah.
And he said, we've got to start to look at that.
So number 10 in a government, if you listen to Sir Simon Case, and it's something I've said for a long, long time, is it's not impotent, but it's almost at the mercy of so many different things. There was a Baroness Worsey who used to be, before she was done over expenses. I remember her saying to me years and years ago, the thing about politics, I remember saying to her, have you made a difference? And she said to me, the thing is, Jez, you enter politics and you believe that you can make a difference and you have fervent beliefs, then you get into government and because all of us want to get a move on, we follow the party line. And then you understand, and I've never forgotten this phrase, the machinations of Whitehall completely overpower you.
Exactly.
Somebody said on the show yesterday about this winter fuel. I'd love to hear what Sir Simon thinks about this. That this, I mean, I'm not sticking up for Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, by the way, but this is something that the civil service have been suggesting to successive chancellors for years.
Of course.
So how does that work?
But that's the difference between a politician and a civil servant. A politician's got to be able to make the judgments that, yes, obviously, on a ledger, or, you know, universal benefits for millionaires getting things, you know, is an irritant to your bean counters, but actually, politically, is it worth the risk? Was the bond market really going to give two hoots whether, you know, Rachel Reeves shaved off 1.5 billion or 750 million off of it? You know, the scale of the sums we're talking about now, they're tinkering. He says we're tinkering around the edges, and actually you've got to have the political will and appetite and guts to actually make changes, you know, to drive down our debt properly, to actually tackle public spending. And until we have that, we are just tinkering around the edges.
Do we think within the confines of the system that we have that we could ever have a politician again, Trump-esque, Thatcher-esque, even Blair-esque, who had a vision, I didn't agree with it, that would come in and attack these systems because of their belief in what they have been voted in to do?
What he said was really interesting, actually, if you look, but we're a little bit misty-eyed about Maggie and we're a little bit misty-eyed about Blair, but actually they're most effective in their second terms, when they'd already had the scars on their backs of trying to deal with all this sort of stuff, and actually once they realised that the grip and the centre, once they got into that system, got into how the system works, they were much more effective. The problem we have now is the short-termism of completely churning over PMs and election. You know,
and also, presumably, they want to keep their jobs, so they don't want to go through a period of uncertainty and unpopularity.
And actually, what was really interesting, he said the biggest success of the British state over the last few years has been education. Education standards now in this country are far, far higher than they were even in the 90s, and that is because there's been a consistent policy. Blair set up academies, Gove put the rocket boosters under them. They've been continued through 14 years of Tory government, and they're just about surviving Bridget Phillipson. But that is because there is a single line there of policy. That is one thing you can see, because there have been consistency. Consistency in policy making is so important because there's been so much chopping and changing of not just personalities, of directions, and that's the problem. And actually, if we can look to how we reformed our education system and apply that across the state, there is still hope.
In terms of him as a human being, did he talk personally about any of the prime ministers or the politicians?
I said, look, I tried to get him to go on that. He told a fascinating story about the moment that Ed Balls had a sort of eureka moment about globalisation, and perhaps maybe that Labour got it wrong.
Actually, we've got this. Simon Case, Labour Minister Ed Balls, now known as the man who cooks a Sunday joint and does Good Morning Britain. Simon Case speaking about former Labour Minister Ed Balls' decision to allow freedom of movement. Have a listen, have a watch.
I remember, again, I hope he won't mind me referring to this. I remember a conversation I had with Ed Balls about this in 2016. He was then an ex-politician. He hadn't yet taken up his new life as a media and dancing star. And I remember him saying to me, and I'll never forget the conversation where he said, this is the thing that none of us thought hard enough about, which was the dark side of globalisation, that this free movement of people around the world as they followed economic opportunity, that this was going to really drive some people round the twist, that it was going to mean that, you know, they weren't ready and they weren't accepting. It actually meant their jobs were the ones that got canned, as it was cheaper to produce steel overseas or what have you.
Fascinating bloke. Economic opportunity or economic opportunism in the country that seems to give more to people who come here than those who are in this country. And I think that's the issue. But you can understand what Ed Balls means.
Yeah.
But we had a society that said it would be a really good idea to have these people in to fill these jobs. I'm far more outspoken than... I mean,
and then the problem is because we did that throughout the late 90s and through the noughties, we actually then took our foot off the skilling up our own people. I mean, it was one of those interviews where I sort of found myself agreeing so much with what was being said because it's so much what I think, but it's so fascinating to hear someone from the deep state, essentially.
Did you feel like saying, did you say anything whilst you were doing this?
Well, I did say
you
that.
sat there going, this is rubbish, man.
I did say that. And he the terms of the interview were quite clear, that he, because of the precedent of his old job, he wasn't going to get into what he did and didn't say to politicians. But I think you can't watch that 35, 40-minute interview without walking away and thinking this guy was clearly was banging his head on the table for a large amount of the time.
Do you get the feeling that he accepts accepted then that the blob does have too much power?
Yeah, no, totally. He is saying the state is too bureaucratic, it's too overbearing. He gives this lovely metaphor of basically starry-eyed politicians. They all arrive, whatever it was they're trying to do, they come in and they sort of get wound, they get sanded down, he said. They get sanded down by this, worn down by this system, and whatever the policy is, it gets sanded down by everyone must have their say, be it officials or politicians or cabinet ministers round the table.
And what would happen? I'm going to go back to it until I die on this chair. What happens if you had a Prime Minister and I'm not interested in what you say, I'm not interested in what you say, I'm not interested about your quango or your committee, I'm not having it sanded down, that's the policy, I got elected and that's bloody well going through the House of Commons.
Well, that is what Britain is waiting for, I think.
Why can't we find that? Because one of the criticisms of Nigel Farage, and everybody knows I voted Reform having been a Tory voter and I've watched what's gone on and I have a few concerns, but one of the reasons with the low argument was he, Nigel Farage, doing what all politicians do and just moving a little bit towards the centre to get those extra votes to end up being the Prime Minister? If that's the case, and that's how you do it, does it desanitise your message? I don't know.
Well, I know, but you've got to win the election first, right? But
why can't you win an election on your principles?
Well, I think you can, but I think you also got to appeal to the widest possible base at the moment. Yeah. What's the point of topping out at 25% if you can get 35% and a massive majority? Do you think it's possible to get 35% and a massive majority in this country if you stood up and said, I'm not deviating, this is what I believe in? All political parties, the two-party system in this country, soon to perhaps maybe, that's the two-party system. You have to build coalitions. Yeah. In Europe, they build the coalitions after the elections. They have all of these random political parties, they all do it in PR, and then they all have to sell out their voters to scramble together to find some sort of common consensus platform for 50% of them to get through. In Britain, for the last 200, 300 years, we've done that before the election. Yeah. The compromise comes internally first, and then you present a united front to the voters. Whether that's sustainable in the modern age, who knows?
Just finally, he said that we're reaching a breaking point with our system and perhaps in people's minds. What does he think might happen?
Well, look, debt crisis is, debt is 100% of GDP now. In the good days it was 30%. That rainy day fund might be needed sooner or later with an increasingly dangerous world. Fascinating. What I think would be really interesting is, we've got to that stage now of yes, as I said earlier, Tories have failed, Labour have failed. Give Nigel a chance, maybe he'll say, what happens after that? Mm-hmm. And we're kind of blessed in this country, unlike other European countries, that our actual far right, are actually pretty whack. They are, pretty crap. They're pretty comical. They're not a serious force.
Yes, they're not.
But one day, perhaps, if the system keeps failing voters, will they go to more and more to the extremes, to the extreme right, to the extreme left?
I think common sense is a great word.
It's not out of the question.
I mean, I've said since we came here, common sense is a really good metaphor, right, for what this state. I mean, Trump used it in his inauguration. But if you're battling a system that sort of pats itself on the back and gives itself a pay. I mean, this all started with me, with Rwanda, which I didn't necessarily agree with, when the civil service, who I pay tax to employ, used more of my money to sue my democratically elected government because it didn't agree with Rwanda. And I remember sitting here saying to you, sorry? Yeah. A bunch of officials using my money to have a go at me when that's wrong.
There is another way. Another way is possible. I went down to the passport office today, and I was dreading it.
Oh my God!
I was absolutely
because he's leaving.
I was absolutely dreading it. I went down to renew my passport. I was in and out in 90 seconds. I did my form online.
Because you're editor at large.
No. Honestly, it was the most efficient interaction.
So if you can do that with a passport office, why can't they do it with immigration?
It was the most efficient interaction I've ever had with the British state.
Really?
I'm currently also trying to change my address on my driving licence, and it's taken me 2 months.
You're trying to change your address on your driving licence?
I'm trying to change my address on my driving licence. I have to go down to the post office, fill in a paper form, fill in another paper form, send off the paper form, wait for the paper form didn't come back, phone them up, wait for an hour on the phone, still nothing, send the paper form again. Online, passport office, that should be the gold standard. Whatever they did to the passport office, because it was in an absolute basket case.
It was that you used to have to drive to Cardiff for 6 months. Three or 4 years ago, it was an absolute basket case. It is now a Rolls-Royce service. Let's make all the British state like that. It'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? And of course, maybe the point about Simon Case's interview with you is that, you know, maybe he walked away after all that time. Yes, personal reasons, but maybe there is that banging your head against a brick wall. And you've got those politicians, as he said, and you said already. They come in, starry-eyed, they bang their head against a brick wall. They don't want to be too unpopular because they want their legacy. I would look at it and go, every single person that has tried this has ended up with egg on their face. So you know what? I want somebody who doesn't care if they end up with egg on their face, they're going to go for it anyway. And if they fall flat on their face, at least they can look in the mirror and say, I tried. I just think the British people deserve better. I really do.
I do. And I look, there's a really nice bit in the piece where he said, look, and I said, look, I said to him at the end of the interview, I said, well, thanks for that. You're just terrified. I thought I'd heard it all. And he said, look, this is a call to arms. This is a call to arms. This is not too late, but time is running out.
Really, 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 please do whatever you can. The Legislative said, never mind the ballots. Honestly, Harry's sitting down with Sir Simon Case, the former Cabinet Secretary and most senior civil servant in the UK. It's on Talks, of course, YouTube, The Sun's YouTube. It's in the newspaper tomorrow. Front
all
page.
over socials.
All over socials. It'll be... it's everywhere. Online. Just go and read it because it's fascinating. And as Harry says, the most powerful person in the establishment politically saying this is a call to arms. We're at a crucial point. Largesse, where are you off to now? Are you editor at large off to the bar?
I'm going back downstairs to finish my article.
You're a great man. Thank you, Harry Cole, live and exclusive on Talk Drive 525. What you make of that, my friends? 0344 499 1000. Coming back in 3.
There he goes, running around Heathrow Airport now. In itself, just ridiculous. He's just standing there. Doesn't quite know what to do. He's being followed by staff. I don't know what kind of staff they are, but put it this way, they're not really up to the task. They're pretty damned unfit. That guy just walking doesn't want to. Now this guy, look at that guy. That guy manages about 4 steps and clearly pulls a hamstring or a muscle.
Yeah, and if you think about the actual cost of this, today Rachel Reeves is saying that the overall cost of the winter fuel payment from making it universal to now making it means tested is going to be £450 million a year. Now, that is a tenth of what we're currently spending on migrant hotels. It is an absolutely enormous sum going basically going to the wall every single year. Meanwhile, we're being told to tighten our belts and other things. And so I think that there is just an overwhelming sense in this country now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
At 5:28, we're live across the UK. Listen, honestly, that is an astonishing article. A great programme as well online. Harry Cole, the Sun's editor-at-large, interviewed Sir Simon Case up to 6 months ago, the most senior civil servant, former cabinet secretary, worked at Buckingham Palace as well. He said, and I quote, "Britain is teetering in a debt crisis crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration whilst facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians," Sir Simon Case says, "are powerless to fundamentally change this country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and bureaucracy." The only lefty who is allowed on this show, and he's allowed any time, because I love the man, Matthew Torwitt, former Labour advisor. He's not very popular with Labour. He's right, Simon Case, isn't he?
Yeah, but I think, I said to you off air, he was in charge. And actually he, from what we read in the past, Dominic Cummings wanted to redo all the civil service. He wanted to centralise power more so. And listen, me and Dominic Cummings aren't ideological bedfellows, although I am seeing him tomorrow, so this will be worth talking about. It's almost
Tell him thank you from me.
I will
One
do.
day I'll tell you the story off air.
Okay, I will do.
Tell him thank you from me.
It doesn't surprise me, because certainly for the last 40 years, we've had a certain class of person who, they're all mates. So I don't want to pick on him, but to spring to mind Sir Simon Stevens. He's head of NHS England. Well, he went to uni with Tony Blair, didn't he, or Keir Starmer, or whoever, and they all end up in these same positions. So is it a wonder that they give power away because that's their mate and we trust them and he's a good, decent person?
But for me, it's really simple. I said it to Harry. I don't understand, right, and maybe I'm naive and stupid, how we've allowed a situation to evolve in the United Kingdom where a democratically elected government, voted for by us, the British people, arrive, as Sir Simon Case said, starry-eyed in 10 Downing Street with great visions and great views, and suddenly realise that the lever of powers will sand down almost every piece of bloody policy they want to bring in, because by the time every quango and committee and department and official and blah, 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 blah has had their say. Now, I don't care if this is unpopular. I'm like, well, that's got to change. I want somebody to walk into Downing Street and say, I'm going to do this, and I don't give a toss who I have to deal with. And if I come across people who don't agree with what I'm doing, I'm going to fire your ass, because I'm the Prime Minister, and that's what's going to happen.
You would hope you elect the Prime Minister and certainly politicians to have power. That's the whole point of them being
But according to Sir Simon Case, they don't. This is really interesting. Stephen in Dorset is a civil servant. Stephen, welcome to Talk Drive. How are you?
Afternoon, gents. I'm not bad. Yourselves?
Yeah, this is fascinating to me. I mean, this is something that won't go away, that phrase, the blob. But when you hear Sir Simon Case, if you read the article, you watch it online, he is saying that over years, decades, power has devolved to the civil service and politicians are powerless to act.
I think the problem when people refer to the civil service, there's sort of various elements to it. Now, you've got people like myself who are literally just on or just above the national living wage, actually try to do the best job we can. But then the people who are higher up in maybe the senior civil service are a bit more, how should we say it, disconnected from society, like some politicians are. And the role we've got to remember is, with civil service, we're there to serve the population, not necessarily what our agenda is or what our politics are. If we don't like what we're doing, get out.
See, to me, I'm so with you, Stephen, right, Matt, that's the thing. I mean, I've already said it literally 10 minutes ago. When the British civil service took legal action against the Tory government about Rwanda, I didn't support them on it, but there's a point to my sentence. I'm thinking, so I'm paying for people, I'm not blaming Stephen and Dawson, I'm paying tax for the civil service to then use more of my money to sue my democratic elected government because it's not on their bloody agenda. That's not their job, Matt Talbot, is it?
No, and Stephen makes a point. I suppose when we talk about the civil service, we think of London, and what we should maybe talk about is Whitehall. That's the sort of, I think, types of people Stephen talks about in the sense of being out of touch, not quite there with reality. Civil servants are all over the show. You know, we have people in job centres, they're civil servants. There's civil servants up and down the country that are, you know,
we're thinking Sir Humphrey and yes, Prime Minister.
Exactly, this is permanent secretaries and otherwise. I think the Rwanda one, if I remember rightly, is they were panicking, not because they had to do it. They were worried about any international law pushback.
But it's
and
not
if they're
for
the
them.
ones that no, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. And I can totally understand being concerned. I don't think I'd have wanted to have signed it if I thought I was potentially breaking international law. But in a way...
But if you were working for me and that's what I was elected to do, you'd have signed it or I'd have sacked you.
No, and I would hope that with regards to international law, and maybe it doesn't work this way, but the politician that's put it forward, that's their piece of legislation.
Absolutely.
They're voting on it, and really the buck should stop with them. You are merely carrying out the government's agenda.
Stephen, do you think the civil service in its entirety, not the lower paid ranks, do you think there is too much power now?
It certainly sounds like, I mean, I certainly didn't personally support them taking action against Rwanda. And I was all, when I say the policy comes out and it's been passed through Parliament, you'd like to think at some point they've done their due diligence to say this is actually lawful, therefore carry on with it. When people start going, actually, you know what, I don't fancy that, at what point do you draw the line and going, I don't fancy doing that?
Completely
So
agree.
You can actually then block and entire Parliament going, no, I don't like that. Sorry.
Line's gone a bit. We're going to have to let you go, but thank you, Talk. Hello, Jez. It's Peter. What this country needs is a complete shake-up. Start with the monarchy and become a republic. Oh, God, it sounds like yes, no, God, here we go. Rachel, just want to say how much I love your show. Right, brilliant. And she's obviously deranged. Bless her heart. Don't change. Caroline, if Reform got into power, they simply should sack these civil servants who will not implement their policies and replace them with highly intelligent Reform members. I would put my hand up for that. Steve's in Cambridge. The blob civil service has been a cancer on all governments in the last 20 years. Take the government to court. Who voted for them? Good to see Harry. Brilliant show as usual. Steve in Cambridge. I'll tell you what I want to do with this is move it to something that I know you're going to deliver on. If you want to speak to Matt Talbot, he's going to be here for ages because I'm going to make him earn his fee. 0344 499 1000. Today, I know. No, did you used to work for Ed Miliband?
No.
No. That idiot has stood up and said, Labour will not apologise. I don't know why I'm doing that voice. They're not going to apologise for their handling of the winter fuel payment cut. He said that the decision last year to strip 10 million pensioners was right. However, today he said Rachel Reeves has done now the right thing by backtracking to announce that she was restoring the payment to approximately 3/4 of the pensioners in England and Wales. So we were going to save 1.5 billion. She's now saving 250 million. The fallout politically is utterly huge. And still that idiot is saying, and I quote, we weren't wrong. The reason I bring it up now is somebody told me yesterday that successive chancellors and governments have been implored by the civil service, we're back there again, to do this for years.
And no one dared do it because of the political pushback.
So why the hell did Rachel Thieves do it?
I told you last week, the man who invented a job for himself in her office as her political secretary, despite no chancellor in history having a political secretary, urged her to do it. The same geniuses that have got us to where we are now. The thing that disappoints me, not just about Ed, but Keir's been questioned on it as well, and I spoke about this with someone yesterday who from the Tory side. I think people would have a lot more respect for politicians if they said sorry sometimes and said, you know what, I called it wrong. Up. I'm human. Yeah. You know, we've got to do better. I'm really sorry. We were very lucky to have a very mild winter, by the way. Could have been miles worse. But I'm sorry for the fear and the whatever, and I've called this wrong and we're going to put it right and we're going to do it this way.
Harry Cole said last week to me, if you bleed for months, it's no good. You just come out there, put your hands up and go, I messed up, I got it wrong, I'm changing it, I'm really, really sorry.
But that's because I think she was pushed into it. I think I told you last week that Keir announced this on the hoof, and then it was going to be at a fiscal statement. It's come now before the fiscal statement. She's had to go away and try and find the money and find a plan because I think she's been blindsided, and that's where I think we'll see the sort of lockstep relationship him and Keir have got, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have got, begin to fray ever so slightly.
Well, this is really interesting because I put your point to somebody yesterday because I'm so old I can't remember who it was. And I said, listen, she's a dead woman walking. They went, no. This person said the ideology and their success and failure is so inextricably linked that if she goes, he would have to follow.
That's the problem. I think in any other time, you'd potentially be able to sack her and go, look, we need to go in a different direction. I've decided, we've got it wrong, whatever. He has tied himself so closely to her in this project by saying, oh, yes, no, and even pre-election, her cast iron rules, and oh, yes, no, Rachel knows. It was almost like he was scared of her. It was that sort of funny thing that, yeah, he wouldn't be far behind at this rate, but, you know, what else are we going to do?
Do you know, it's really interesting watching your reaction to this over the months, and there's almost a sign of resignation about you already.
Yeah, I said last week, we've lost the next election. I was arguing about someone about it today, and they said, yeah, we've got 4 years yet. I said, yes, it could get worse. I don't think there's potential it could get better. I think, and I said a year ago nearly, that this would be terminal, the winter fuel. They'll win some credibility back with some people.
Will they? Will they?
No, we're talking.
Can you
a few
imagine
people.
9 million pensioners ever voting for the Labour Party again? No, because they wouldn't trust them to,
no, it's true.
to take a wee.
I think the only way they may benefit is the biggest barrier to reform is reform. Who will fall out overnight about all sorts. There is a natural sort of paranoia about Nigel, about anybody that may be of any sort of personality that could potentially challenge him at one point. He's used to doing things his own way. And they could, due to lack of professionalisation and lack of a proper, real, serious team, and I mean, we're talking hundreds of people like running it like a leader of the opposition's office outwards. Without that, Labour could cling. It'd be a hung parliament, and Labour may get some help from the Liberals. That's the way they cling on. But I very, very, very little hope, Jeremy.
There we go. 20 minutes to 6. What do you want to make of all of this today? This is brilliant. Matt Torbett will be with us for the next 10 minutes. You want to ask a question, want to get on? 0344 499 1000. He's going to a break, and he's got to sit there for 3 minutes and work out that I'm going to ask him all about that odious little mare, Greta Thunberg. That's next on Talk Drive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Your messages, 87222, start your message with the word talk. Elizabeth Croston, hi Jez, we had a Labour MP during the Blair era. He told me personally that nothing would change unless it had the go-ahead of the bloody civil servants. They ran the country. Interesting. Jez, this is anonymous. I have a relative who is a senior civil servant. I won't identify the department. They happily tell me how they stop anything getting done and only like ministers who do as they're told. I mean, but you're laughing, but that's, to most of us sort of, you know, everyday people, that's bloody awful.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've known civil servants in my time, and they mostly have understood that they are there to advise. Not in a political way, but you maybe can or can't do this because of the way the system is built or whatever else. I think the frustration that I get with stuff like that, they've never sort of overreached from what I can gather, but where I get annoyed with most people is we always tend to think really one-dimensionally about how can we do things within the current system. Why can we not do things totally differently and go, well, we have to change this bit of the system then if we want to get this bit done, because we're never going to get bits done otherwise, are we?
No, after it's high time civil service contracts have a clause inside. If they refuse to implement or even hinder a policy of an elected government on the day being implemented, they're instantly dismissed without means of appeal. That's Mike in Lincoln. To the phone lines, David's in Gloucester. Matthew Torbett, the only lefty allowed on my show, is here. What do you want to say?
Well, I think everybody's been saying the same as what my thoughts are. I mean, it all... Well...
Great, well done. No, didn't understand a word of that. Sorry about that. Let's go to Peter in Liverpool. It's one of those days today, technically. Peter in Liverpool. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hi, Jeremy, mate. How are you?
I'm all right. Matthew Torbett is here, the only Labour advisor, former Labour advisor allowed in this studio. He's a top man. What do you want to say, Pete?
Fantastic. First of all, it's a pleasure to speak to you, Jeremy. Secondly, why don't we turn the whole thing round? These people who are coming over on boats, why don't we arrest them and then say, give us names, give us numbers, give us addresses, and based upon arrests, you can stay here freely. Well, what's wrong with doing that?
It would break international law, unfortunately.
Oh, God, bloody international law.
The way the system is set up is technically they've not actually done anything wrong, and I've spoke about this before. The 1951 Convention on Refugees says that the only way you can be processed as a refugee or asylum seeker is to do it at the country, at the shore. So you're not getting a plane over from somewhere where you are fleeing Afghanistan, Ukraine, whatever. You're coming over via irregular means. Yeah, no, totally. So because of that, we have to hear their case, unfortunately, due to that convention. What I've always said is I would prefer to see offshore processing, set up and the French have offered it before under Boris Johnson's era, have a processing centre in France, have it at pinch points where there is a lot of refugees clearly coming, so you'd have it in Turkey if people are coming from Syria and vice versa, and that way they're not throwing the passport in the channel, we know who they are, they're being processed properly, we do it at embassies potentially, and that way politically, for people like Keir Starmer, you're not getting the optics of people coming across the channel.
So why doesn't somebody do that then? Does the civil service disagree?
I am leading a bit of a one-man campaign within it. People in the Labour Party agreeing with me is people, and the other thing is you can get a broad consensus. The lefties are happy because they're going, oh, it's a safe and legal route. This is good. This is what we like. And the right of the party are going, great, we're dealing with immigration. I might keep my seat from reform. I think potentially, I don't know this for certain, but you've got a human rights lawyer in number 10 who maybe doesn't like this sort of stuff, and actually we should hear everybody's case. That's my only logic.
Pete, what do you make of this country, though? Do you think we're on our arse?
I wouldn't fight for it now, Jeremy, if you want me to be honest with you.
You what?
I wouldn't fight for it now, if you want me to be honest with you.
Did you used to fight for this country?
Well, Queen and country. You know, even the King's got a bit of wokeness, God love him, Annie.
There is madness, mate. Yeah, listen, and I understand when people. I mean, you know, you did your bit for your country. Great to have you on, pal. Liverpool red or Everton blue?
I'm a red, mate.
You're a red. Fantastic season, good man. Hello to Karen H. She's from Faith. So good. Could you please ask Matthew whether he thinks Yvette Cooper is potentially on resignation watch? Apparently, rumours abound that Mrs. Balls might be thinking of stepping aside because she's not happy with the potential Treasury cuts to the Home Office, Matt.
No, I think she's largely got what she's wanted. We'll probably see tomorrow. I think there will actually be a slight cut in police numbers, but there'll be funding that Rowley and others have been asking for. I think she'll be fine. Could she be reshuffled out eventually? Possibly. I think there's a fair few that you may see that from.
When do you think there'll be a reshuffle?
I'd have thought pre-conference. Conference is September. I think 12 months will bed in. We'll have a long recess, and then maybe some time after
that. Does Ed Millipede go?
I don't know, you know. I'd have thought so. I'd have thought he'd be one on resignation watch. There's a few things that have gone against his net zero agenda that he can't be happy with. I get on with his some elements of his staff quite well, and they're struggling with it all at the minute. They're, you know, as depressed as anybody, I think, because they're not getting what they want, and obviously it's a mess everywhere else. I think he might survive. Keir and Ed have been very close, and Ed is a big reason why Keir got his seat in the first place and sort of stitched it up for him in Holborn and St Pancras in 2015. So
it's jobs for the bleeding boys, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's what I hate. I had a young Labour staff member approached me for a coffee today. And he said, I just want to try and learn and whatever. And I said, yeah, no, I'm happy to help. Young lad, 23, from Bolton, similar background to me. And he said, I'm just really struggling. I used to be a teacher, support teacher. I loved the kids. I want to make a difference. And I got swept up with the change. He's only been there since September, utterly depressed. What's the point? We can't get anything done. And you go, do you know what? If that's how we are already with young lads, I remember being as excited like that. I had hope, and it was ironic, Jeremy Corbyn that gave me hope. I thought, oh, this is something I can get behind. I said, the sad thing is that you'll come to realise, and you get all the enthusiasm beaten out of you over the years.
How sad's that?
And I felt really sad about it, and I said,
I don't care what your politics are, you've got to be passionate, right? Let's go to Newcastle, you great place. Karen, you're on Talk Drive. Hello, darling.
Hiya, Jeremy.
Say hello to Matt Torbett.
Hi, Matt.
Hello, good night. Oh, good night out of the big market, innit?
Oh, it's
good night out.
Newcastle, great. Right, 2 minutes. What you got?
I'm surprised you haven't learnt him Geordie yet.
Not quite.
Why, man, can do the tour. Did you know that Newcastle's a short joyride from Sunderland? Right, crack on, come on.
Right. I agree with you, Jeremy, with the Trump. He said what he was going to do when he got in. He did it. I just wish that Starmer would do the same. I mean, let's face it, we've got this Muppet Party that's been in for 11 months now, and Trump's been in, a couple of months? And he's done far more than what Starmer and the Muppet Party have done.
Well, I think there's a point here that when the election was on, I remember covering this, they didn't say much, the Labour Party. It was that Ming Vase thing, don't drop anything, just you're going to be elected. The Tories are so bloody unpopular, and we didn't really know much. There was this sort of broad church, but there wasn't that much detail. Trump was very specific. I mean, America is more split than ever before. He's trying to deport immigrants from LA, and they're all jumping up and down, all the lefties going, this is outrageous, this is outrageous. But he doesn't care about that. I think, Karen, what we don't have in this country, and I don't actually blame Keir Starmer. Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings will tell you tomorrow. Boris Johnson had a fantastic opportunity and didn't do what he said he was going to do. And I think a lot of people feel frustrated about that. And I think I want a politician who doesn't give a toss if they lose their job, that they're going to be elected on something they believe in, and they're going to stand by whatever flack they take. And if they get thrown out, that they die on the sword of what they believe in and what they gave us and what they promised us.
I spoke to a Tory MP yesterday who said very similar. He said, I had a lot more respect for Jeremy Corbyn than what I did Keir Starmer. He said, because I disagreed with nearly 100% of what Jeremy Corbyn was proposing when he was leader, but you almost know he'd have gone through with what he said he was going to do, because he was a man of principle.
Well, he did. He lost an election. He lost the leadership of his party because he didn't deviate, actually. You have to say that point. Matt, I have to go. It's an amazing... We love having you on. He's that popular now. I passed him in the building yesterday. He had an entourage around him and he ignored me.
I did not know. I promise.
I owe you dinner. Matt Torbett on Talk Drive, 10 to 7. Back in 3.
you can see that he's wearing a black belt around his waist. That is a waistband that is used to restrain troublesome deportees. So when the staff, the Home Office contractors who accompany foreign criminals on those deportation flights think that somebody they're escorting is going to cause trouble, they put one of these restraining waistbands on him.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk about you, the voice of a man who's looking forward to the spending. What's it called tomorrow? What's it called? Spending review tomorrow, peeps. I might stay in bed. Push the button, Ames.
Sport Summary on Talk.
Sport for Tuesday. Sam Ellard, he's here. Day 2. What commitment? How are you, son?
Fine.
What's the matter with you?
No, it's fine. I'm 5:54. I mean, the previous guest, great guy, well-spoken, knows his stuff, popular, but the sport's just getting pushed back and back. And do you know what? It's fine. I'm okay with it. This is a news station, but it just makes me feel like I'm not wanted anymore, JK.
You're always wanted, Sam. Your mother told me I had to look after you. There's not much to talk about. The transfer window is about the most exciting thing. The clubs only have 7 p.m. tonight. Why is it not 10 or midnight so I can sit and watch it? Some of the best viewing ever was Jim White on Sky, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't quite think we're going to have the drama of this evening. But as we touched on yesterday, there's kind of a little mini transfer window for teams to get stuff done before the Club World Cup. Then it's going to close for a little bit and then reopen again. But yeah, it's 7 o'clock this evening. Really, the kind of headlines over here is Man City and Chelsea who are trying to get stuff done. Borussia Dortmund news today have rejected Chelsea's increased offer, £50 million for Jamie Gittens, very talented attacking midfield player. Chelsea trying to get that deal done. Elsewhere, Man City working on a deal for the Lyon playmaker Ryan Cherki, really talented midfield player again. City trying to get that deal done before the deadline today. If not, I think they'll get that deal done when the window opens up again. But we know City also want the AC Milan midfield player Reinders. So I think Chelsea and City, JK, they're the two teams trying to get stuff done in the next couple of hours.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's just a couple of hours and then it opens. England, Senegal. I loved Thomas Tuchel the other day slagging off the English team. I thought it was utterly fantastic. He said it wasn't very impressive. I wasn't happy. It's going to improve. How nice to hear a manager not throwing his players under the bus, but actually pointing out they were crap the other night, weren't they? Senegal, when's that? Tonight, is it?
Yeah, it's tonight. Whoa, it's a friendly game tonight. Yeah, look, I think, listen, you know, that the game against Andorra, I mean, goodness me. I think they're ranked 541st in the world.
We're going to win 1-0, aren't we, with a penalty? That's what's going to happen.
Probably, and then it'll be the same thing. And then, yeah, listen, Andorra wasn't bad. Andorra wasn't good. The hope is tonight, maybe a few more goals, maybe a little bit of entertainment, and then, hey, listen, I think these kind of international games after the season finishes, Jez, they're a little bit of a...
Do you like me? I mean, I get really... I like you. I'm a massive football fan. And I can't get excited about England until they're at a quarter. And then I've got this pessimistic view that they're never going to win anything. And I used to get really angry. It's sort of water off a duck's back now. I'm sure Tuchel's a really nice man, but we're not going to win anything, are we? We got the best players in the world and we never seemingly are able to do it. It just frustrates everybody, man.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's quite hard to get too excited about international games that aren't major tournaments. I mean, the qualifiers England play are against teams that we should beat and aren't particularly entertaining. So I do agree with you on that. Do you know what? I'm going to be more positive. This England team on paper is still seriously talented. There's no doubt.
What about the golden generation of Beckham and Scholes and all those players we won Jack?
100%. Maybe this England team is a bit more maybe united and together than that England team. And let's have the faith. We appointed Thomas Tuchel, who we do know is a manager that's won.
He's a German.
He is German. Maybe that's a more of a reason why we might win then, because we have got a German manager. Two things, Jeremy, away from football. Have you got time, or do you need to go back to
Emma Raducanu, isn't it? Go on.
I was going to just point out very briefly for the people that at Queen's, Emma Raducanu, Katie Bolter, and Heather Watson all advancing to the second round, which is really, really good news. And also as well,
Emma Raducanu's won a match. Woohoo! Woohoo! Woohoo!
Why do you have to be so pessimistic about the Raducanu all the time?
Because I genuinely believe we had a world-class tennis player ever since when if you fart in her direction, she does a leg in and can't play for a month. Honestly, it's ridiculous.
Injuries are part and parcel of sport. It can happen. And two things to look out for in the world of cricket. We've got the final T20 tonight, England-West Indies. England 5 from 5, of course, in the white ball series against the West Indies under the captaincy of Harry Brook. And also, you know what? I'll mention it. The World Test Championship final tomorrow. Australia, boo, up against South Africa at Lord's. Yay. How good would it be if South Africa can win the World Test Championship and beat the Aussies at Lord's?
You certainly not. Come on, Australia. You missed the most important sport this week, Thursday. It's the 153rd Open at Oakmont. Quite possibly the most difficult,
maybe, Jeremy,
most difficult golf course. There's a par 3 that's 300 yards. Tomorrow on Sport, I want your top 3 picks for the US Open. This will be the hardest. They interviewed, this is absolutely true, they interviewed a golfer, I don't know which one it was, over the weekend on Sky, and they said if we gave, it was Ben Griffin actually, if we gave you +5 right now for the 4 rounds, would you take it? He said absolutely. It is an absolute monster. It'll be carnage. The rough's like 6 foot deep. It's unbelievable. Great viewing. So tomorrow I want 3 picks, all right?
I'm looking forward to it, JK, already.
And remember, when you support South Africa, you should support Australia.
Well, no, in cricket,
your family were deported to Australia years ago for crimes committed, and I think you should be supportive of your ancestors.
Excuse me?
I'm joking. It's lovely having you on.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
What are you on about?
Great to have you on tomorrow. News at 6 next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Back, final hour of Drive for Tuesday across the UK at the home of common sense and free speech. And as ever, my friends, down to you. Whatever you want to talk about in the next hour, 0344 499 1000 is my telephone number. You can text 8722. I know you're all really excited about the spending review tomorrow. We're going to try and make it as exciting as possible. We're going to get Peter Carball to dress up as a Martian and walk up and down Westminster with the microphone. We're not, I'm joking. Listen, in the next hour, whatever you want to talk about, maybe you want to still talk about that winter fuel U-turn, screeching U-turn by the Labour government, which today has been backed up by Sir Dreary Ed Miliband saying, and I quote, "We will not apologise." Well, you should do, you got it wrong. Greta Thunberg, yes. The boat didn't make Gaza. She got arrested and she's been put on an economy flight back to France, deported by the Israelis. Hurrah! Go to school. A group of MPs also jumping in to protect free speech on religion. So much to talk about. And I haven't had this man on for 2 weeks. This man is to this show what I am. Very important. Sir John Redwood, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. A very good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm in good form, Jeremy, and thanks for the cracking introduction. Yes, we can make it more exciting than those dull old Treasury papers.
How boring is tomorrow going to be, John? Honestly, how boring?
Well, I think it's going to be pretty boring because they've leaked it all in advance, the good bits, and then we've all got to dig through and find out where all the bad bits are, and that will be the media.
Can you
game
book John
tomorrow.
for tomorrow? Because he can wear that jacket and chill me out. Because I'm honestly, it's 3 hours of turgid boredom. Right, John. I'm going to start with the obvious one because there's loads I want to go with. You, in your experience, even me in my minimal of experiences, could have told the Labour government 12 months ago, 11 months ago, this ridiculous winter fuel payment cut was going to be their poll tax moment. I mean, just a appalling look, and screeching U-turn would be an understatement, but not just come out with it and do it. They've gone round the houses and eavesdropped Rachel Reeves in it, blah, blah, blah. Today, having done this U-turn, which I'd like to point out means that a policy that was going to save 1.5 billion will only save 250 million, right? Ed Miliband, the Energy and Security and Net Zero Secretary, defended the original decision and said that it was right, but it's also right that she's changed her mind today, and you can't criticise us for listening to people. What he means by that is we got slaughtered in the local elections. We realise this is potentially the worst decision we've ever taken, but we're not going to say sorry. I think they should apologise to the British people, don't you, John?
Well, of course they should apologise. You knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. All the opposition parties knew it was wrong. The public knew it was wrong. It polled badly to start with, and they normally watch the polls. So they got it hopelessly wrong. And now in the hole, they keep digging it. So they haven't got a proper solution. So we've got this absurd situation where everybody has to be paid it. And then if you earn more than 35,000, you get it clawed back somehow. And they haven't quite told you how and when they get into your bank account to take the money back, and they've got to work that out. I mean, if they wanted to just make the point that rich people shouldn't get the full amount, they could have said, we'll keep it universal, but you're going to pay tax on it. So that then if you were a 40% taxpayer, you would pay a bit of tax on it. That would have been the easiest way to do what they now seem to want to do. But as you rightly say, I mean, the tragic joke is they won't end up with any savings at all.
No.
And maybe it will be 250 million, but maybe it'll be nothing, because, of course, what they did in their panic about actually hitting some people who really needed this money was they marketed pensioner credit far more aggressively. They got another 60,000 onto pensioner credit, which is a lot dearer than the fuel amount was. And so you've got to knock that off the savings as well.
It's utterly unbelievable, in my humble opinion, and I said it earlier, that a party that must have known for months, probably a couple of years, that it was going to be elected, it seems so badly prepared. And if you're talking about money, the British people, they don't have to be switched on like you are. But the British people are going to go, hold on a minute, you've just given the Chagos Islands and 16 billion quid away. You talked about a black hole when you came in of 11 billion. Well, what about the overseas budget? What about the money you've given to your union mates? How come we're worse off now than we were under a Tory government which was floundering and quite possibly about as popular as I don't know what, a wart? I mean, it is beyond comprehension to me that, this lot... I wasn't looking forward to it, but they've exceeded any expectation, however low that was of mine. I mean, does it not blow your mind how appallingly bad they are?
Yeah, I mean, I thought they got some bright people in there, and I thought they'd spin better. I thought they'd have a narrative that certainly their own supporters liked. They haven't even got that. But, you know, the bottom line of Rachel Reeves in the Treasury in almost a year now is that she inherited plans to borrow 87 billion for the last year. She ended up borrowing 147 billion, and that big surge in borrowing has put up the long-term interest rates that she said shouldn't go any higher. So she's been creating the very kind of crisis she wanted to claim the Tories had already created, and the figures are far bigger for her. She's spent far more, she's borrowed far more, and she's put those longer-term interest rates well above the levels they were in 2022.
Is she, in your experience as a cabinet minister, a couple of quick questions before we move on, is she out of her depth, John?
Well, she looks it, doesn't she? I mean, she looks terrified half the time because everything she does goes the wrong way. And, you know, for someone who's got perfectly good educational qualifications in economics, how did she not know the most basic thing, which is that if you put a socking great big tax on employing people, you'll drive unemployment up and you'll make business conditions very difficult.
And that phrase they came out with, they went on and on and on about growth. And the first thing you do is make it virtually impossible for any small or medium-sized bloody business to survive. And they're the people, the lifeblood, who create jobs and create money. Second thing is, there's been, really interesting, the only lefty I allow is Matthew Talbot, who I love listening to, and he's got a very balanced view, and he's very cynical about his party and what they've done. He says she's toast, and he says that they are inextricably linked and that her position will weaken Starmer's position. This is from a former Labour advisor who says that, in his opinion, both she and Starmer will not be there at the next election. Thoughts on that, JR?
Well, I think that may well be true. I mean, we know from Conservative and Labour past conflicts between chancellors and prime ministers, when they do fall out, inevitably the chancellor goes, probably after quite a long gap, and then normally the prime minister follows quite quickly afterwards. And you had the Blair-Brown wars, and you had something similar with some of the Conservative twinnings. And so, yes, prime ministers and chancellors have to get on, and they have to agree a common strategy. And above all, they have to stick with it.
Yeah.
And you don't give in the first time you get public opinion wrong and something goes a bit adrift. You have to double down and go on with your strategy. If you're going to get rid of something that you got hopelessly wrong, you should do it very quickly and very apologetically. And that gives you your best chance. People will forgive you the odd error if you say, I'm sorry and I got it wrong. But this middle ground where you reverse quite a bit of it, you make it more complicated, and you just rub home to people that the whole thing was a complete mess, is the sure way to sink in the polls and to have to think about sacking the Chancellor.
Now, lots of people, and please keep your response going, by the way, 7222, start your message with the word talk, and keep calling. So John Redwood will answer your questions, 0344 499 1000. Here's something I want to put to you. We had Harry Cole here an hour ago, Sir John, on his programme Never Mind the Ballots, and in The Sun tomorrow, a fantastic interview. I don't mean to ambush you if you don't know about this, was Sir Simon Case. Did you hear me talking about this? This is extraordinary. Sir Simon Case, freed of the shackles of being the Cabinet Secretary and the most senior civil servant, a man who worked in Buckingham Palace and the spy world, said, and I quote in tomorrow's Sun, Britain is teetering on a debt crisis crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration whilst facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians, Sir John Redwood, are powerless to fundamentally change the country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and bureaucracy. That from the ex-head of the civil service, which just about sums up what most of us think about the blob, right?
Yeah, I think that really is remarkable. And the government has started to get there because they've done a bit of briefing saying, you know what, we pull the levers and nothing happens. Well, the art of being a really good minister is to work with the officials you've got, or if necessary, to the extent you're allowed to, change some of the key ones, but to make sure that your will prevails and that Parliament is able to get through what enough MPs and the public want. Whereas all too often at the moment, it's just not happening.
Take me in your experience, because what he said was fascinating to me and really got our audience, who hear this phrase, the blob. They see civil servants in the Home Office a year ago using taxpayer money to sue a democratically elected government. I didn't agree with Rwanda, but they took their own... That is ludicrous, because where I come from, you go, right, so you're an elected politician. I've elected you to implement a policy that your party and I agree with. Go for it. So you what was your last cabinet minister post? Which department was it?
Well, I was Secretary of State for Wales, so I had all the departments in Wales because that was in the days when it was directly governed.
OK, so the way that Simon Case says it, which is fascinating, is they arrive starry-eyed and there's all these bloody levers. There's quangos and committees and civil servants and other officials, and by the time they've sort of gone through a few weeks, the policy's been sanded down and they don't get their way, because the truth is we now live in a country which is not governed by the 200 people who change jobs when the government changes, but by this over-bloated civil service. How did you deal with these people? How did you get stuff through? How has it changed so much, Sir John?
Well, I don't think it has changed that much. It's got a bit worse because there are more of these so-called independent bodies. But with the independent bodies that reported through me, I made them report to me. I didn't allow them to be fully independent. I said, you are accountable to Parliament through me. You will come and agree your budget. You will come and have a mid-year review. You will come and have an annual report review. And I will report to Parliament that we've had a meeting and what progress you're making. You have to put them under your command. And if they won't, you get rid of them. I got rid of the chief executive and the group of officials that were running NHS Wales when I was there, and put it direct back into the health department with two senior officials reporting directly to me. You've got to be able to make the key calls relatively quickly and make sure they get through. And you should never assume they are being done. You've got to follow up. And the one luxury you get on your desert island as a minister is you can choose your own private office staff from within the civil service. You've got to choose good private secretaries. They are your eyes, your ears, your enforcers, and no minister can get anywhere unless they've got a really good team around them following up every time the minister wants something to be done.
But then you would say, and I had a text about this earlier, Dominic Raab, quite forceful, had opinions, sacked a couple of people, stood his ground and got thrown out for bullying. So we live in a different world now, right?
Well, no, I mean, it was always the same world. I did what I described, saying please and thank you, and trying to make sure that I could also think through where that person was themselves. I mean, one person that I had to get rid of, make redundant, they were a perfectly good person, so I helped them get a much better job, and they were very thrilled, and they used to send me Christmas cards. But I'd got what I wanted because I got the obstacle out of the way, and I'd taken back control within the department.
Man of the people, good man. There's a couple of light-hearted things, but I start with, well, a very light-hearted one. Watch Sir John Redwood's face if you're watching online. Greta Thunberg got on a boat, smiling really, with several other activists to stop the war and deal with Gaza. She got arrested outside and taken to a port in Israel. They gave her a sandwich, which she says was a photo opportunity. She's now been put on an economy flight, we're not going to say which airline, back to France. Greta Thunberg has been deported. I'm all for people believing in causes. Is she not a really good example of activists, John, who jump on the back of the latest fad and it does absolutely nothing for the case of that they seem to be following? I think Just Stop Oil, I think Net Zero, all these people, does it make a... go to school, love. Jeez, honestly. I can't be
Yeah, I mean, why has she moved on from one cause to another? I thought the passion of her life was net zero, and now she's on to this Gaza terrible situation. But what a crazy thing to do, to think you can sail a boat into a war zone with a tiny amount of food aid and stand there and give out this little bit of food aid to people who desperately need more food aid, where the Israelis say they're now organizing proper aid. It was never going to work. It was just a publicity stunt for that small group of people and wasn't going to contribute to resolving a very unpleasant war where there's a huge amount of danger for all involved. I mean, it was irresponsible.
Very quickly, two things. You were Environment Secretary as well, weren't you?
I was Shadow Environment Secretary. Yes.
Councils are cracking down on the public with what critics are slamming the busybody fines, dishing out penalties for the most trivial of offences. From putting your bins out a bit too early to feeding the ducks at a park. In one shocking case, a man in West London was slapped with a fine for simply putting his bins out before collection day. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has blasted local authorities for their Stasi-like control of people's lives. And it's not a one-off, Sir John Redwood. A research from the Manifesto Club reveals these fines have skyrocketed by nearly 42% in just a year, with 20,000 fixed penalties. So we've got crime on the streets, we've got no army, we've got migrants flooding our borders, and the bloody police are out giving penalty notices to people who put their bins out, and they wonder why our country's in trouble.
Yeah, it's more two-tier justice, isn't it? It's not driving everybody mad. The law-abiding, decent people who go to work, pay the taxes, get clobbered for technical infringements or simply wrongly, as those cases were. I mean, it wasn't actually against the rules to feed the ducks, I believe, and it wasn't against the rules to put your bins out a little bit early because you were going on holiday. And what else could you do? Because you wanted to make sure that the things were picked up. You just need a bit of common sense. But when you've got a Prime Minister who is part of that international lawyer, senior official set, who thinks it's all about rules and rule enforcement on those who are largely or wholly compliant, this is the kind of problem you get. It just magnifies through the system. We need some common sense, and we need to target the real criminals who are violent or stealing or not.
Absolutely. I mean, how is that not? That's not even common. Well, I'm with you now. This is a tricky one for you, Sir John Redwood. I've just had this handed to me. I personally think you should be in the House of Lords, but you got the knighthood. Maybe the House of Lords will follow. Breaking news. Do you know this? The House of Lords canteen has served peers a pride crumble dessert with a rainbow-coloured topping. The River restaurant in Parliament, which caters for peers and other staff on the parliamentary estate, offered as its hot dessert yesterday an option of pride crumble. The topping of the £2.15 pudding appeared to be dyed with red and blue food colouring in horizontal stripes and was served with custard to mark Pride Month in the United Kingdom. This comes after the House of Lords removed pride flags from its canteen, put up at the start of June, following a complaint from a peer who was 145. Here's the question. Will you be popping in for lunch and would you buy the Pride Crumble, Sir John Redwood?
Well, they haven't invited me, and no, I wouldn't be buying the Pride Crumble, I'm afraid. I think I'd want something else. But I do believe in choice, and it's not the end of the world if people have different views on these things, I guess.
Do you get to go back to the House of Commons now, or is that you out? Can you go there now? Because I went to that bar the other day. Very nice. Can you go back any time or not?
Well, I've got a visitor's pass as a member who'd been there for quite a long time, which is what you're allowed to do. But I only go when I've got people to see and meetings to attend. But I do sometimes. I go back.
Don't you know when you go? You know when you go to London for the weekend? I'll just go there for a free meal. It's £2.15 for a Pride Crumble. I pop in there. It's a bit cheaper than Harrods or something like that.
No, I haven't been doing that.
we love having you on, Sir John. Thank you so much. Really interesting to get your take on the blob and everything else. Sir John Redwood, former Tory cabinet minister, a man who speaks complete common bloody sense. He should have led the Tory party. I said it absolutely is. 6:20. Kev's here at 7. By the way, please do me a favour. If you want to be on in the next 40 minutes, loads of you trying to do 87222. Start your message with the word talk. If you want to be on the radio, or, well, have I said it like that? Or television? 0344 419 1000. Back in 3, off for a week.
he goes, running around Heathrow Airport now. In itself, just ridiculous. He's just standing there. Doesn't quite know what to do. He's being followed by staff. I don't know what kind of staff they are, but put it this way, they're not really up to the task. They're pretty damned unfit. That guy just walking doesn't want to. Now this guy, look at that guy. That guy manages about 4 steps and clearly pulls a hamstring or a muscle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:24. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, it's the only way to wake up. Mike Graham. Why did I do that? MG here tomorrow morning, 6 till 10, Monday to Friday, with Morning Glory, Migrant of the Day, and my favourite new feature, which is the first lie that Starmer's going to come out of his gob on a daily basis. Liar of the Day, or Lie of the Day, I should say. Mike Graham, currently relaxing with a bottle of wine or two. He'll be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. Don't forget as well, in tomorrow's Sun newspaper, that amazing article, the interview that Harry Cole did. You can see it online. Sun Online, never mind the ballots. You can see it on all social media. Tomorrow in the newspaper, online in the paper now. Sir Simon Case, the most senior civil servant in the United Kingdom up to 6 months ago when he retired, telling Harry Cole, and I'm going to keep repeating this, is massive, Britain is teetering on a debt crisis, crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration whilst facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians, says Sir Simon Case, are fundamentally powerless to change our country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy. And that, my friends, is from the guy that used to head up the civil service. Chris is in Epsom. Chris, couple of minutes on Talk Drive. What you got?
All right. Well, you and John nailed a lot of the financial missteps by Labour. But you forgot to add in the private schools VAT, 12,000 kids kicked out mid-term. There's not enough places for them in the government schools locally, so they're having to ship them by taxi all over the place. It didn't raise any money. It cost money. It's actually cost money. Everything Reeves does costs money. The about turn on the winter fuel, right? So she's going to raise 250 million, right? So that's 1.25 billion that she's not going to get, that they've already spent. So that's more money she's going to have to borrow.
When I made a joke of how Richard III, or Rachel Thieves, as she is affectionately known, lying and saying she was an economist and they don't think she was, she does on a daily basis, whether you like it or not. Not you, I'm talking about generally. She looks out of her depth. I thought that Sir John Redwood made a very salient point. She looks scared every time the cameras are pointed at her. And I find it almost... Well, not abhorrence, it's the wrong word. I find it shocking that professional politicians who spent that long preparing for government, and I'm not just saying it because they're Labour, because I'm proud of Great Britain, and actually if Labour had come in and turned it round, I'd go fair play because the Tories have messed everything up. But they are that incompetent, and I listen, my mouth drops open at how incompetent they are, right?
Jeremy, listen, I'm a third-generation Tory, but I got fed up with Johnson and his liberal knicker-wetting buddies. And when Labour came in, I was prepared to give them a chance.
Yeah.
All right? And, I mean, my family are Tory through and through, or were. Now, the thing is that you remember when they used to win the consecutive governments, called it UK PLC, and we're all in it together. If it was UK PLC now, if this was a commercial company, the board would be toast because the shareholders, us, the taxpayers, wouldn't stand for it.
No, and we'd also, the company would have gone into liquidation. We are, as somebody pointed out earlier, we are that skint, right? we can't even afford the interest on the debts that we have. I mean, tomorrow we've got this hugely exciting financial review. I mean, Sir John also nailed it just then. They've released the good bits. Tomorrow will be drudgery and misery, and I just, you know, I say it every day, Chris. It's not a call to arms. It's just me venting, but I'm amazed at how appalling so many of these politicians are, how talentless, bad communicators, and I'm amazed at how bad the planning is. But more than anything, I can't get my head round the lack of common sense in so many of these policies.
Harry Cole, you had on earlier, right?
Yeah.
I've got the link on YouTube. I'm going to watch it when you've finished. Harry Cole is how the hell did he nail that interview? Don't let him go to America. We need him here. Interviewing more people. And what a legend. I mean, what Simon Case has revealed is what we've all suspected for the last 20 years.
Of course.
And I tell you, Nigel should be on the phone to him now.
Be very, very interesting. What do you make, by the way? Great news. Our colleague, Dr. David Bull, new chairman of Reform.
The moment I heard the news, I messaged him and gave him congratulations. I'd missed his weekend show, but I knew he was more than up to the job, and he'd make a complete success of it.
Is he not going to be able to... Oh, no, he won't be able to do his show at the weekends. Watch the Vultures Circle. That'll be interesting. Listen, great to be on. Thank you, Chris. Chris in Epsom, 630 0344 419 1000. Jez says Tracy in Bromley. Isn't it amazing how the blob allows stupid policies such as giving away their Chagos Island, screwing pensioners over the winter fuel? All of it's very telling. Perhaps we should shut them down. They make no sense. Listen... Immigration, sorry about this, will be front and centre on this station and probably politically for the next 4 years, which ensures that my next guest, a man who, if I was in power, would have a job sorting it, International Border Control expert Henry Bolton. Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Jeremy, I'm fine, thank you.
This is ridiculous. Okay, here's a question for you. A bit lighthearted. You'll have seen the news about Greta Thunberg. Have you seen old Greta?
I have, yes.
Yeah, Greta being deported by the Israelis. She's currently on an economy flight, sitting next to the bog on the way back to the United Kingdom, which is great. Somebody wrote earlier and said, "Isn't it interesting that Israel can deport Greta Thunberg within 12 hours, having given her a cheese sandwich, and yet we can't deport anybody? We just allow our land to be just carved up by whoever wants to be here." Here's a deportation story. Mike was talking about this. For you, ex-serviceman, watch and listen to Henry Bolton's reaction. An Iraqi asylum seeker avoided being removed from the UK, HB, after claiming that he had a love affair with the wife of a powerful colonel in his home country. The Iraqi sought protection in the United Kingdom after he arrived by arguing that he could be killed if he was sent back to the Middle Eastern country over his affair. The man in his, honest to God, the man in his mid-20s said he fell in love with a young woman in Iraq and had a relationship with her after she married a colonel in the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. The Home Office tried to remove the man, named only as BM, it's unfortunate, over a lack of credibility in his case. But guess what? A left-wing human rights lawyer utilised the ECHR, and that man, who slept with somebody else's wife in another country, is living here on benefits and having a lovely... It's embarrassing being British, Henry. It's embarrassing.
It's terrible, Jeremy. Back in March, there was an Iraqi, and they didn't deport him because in Iraq he had been threatened with arrest because he'd been helping pupils or selling exam papers in advance to pupils at school. So they threatened him with arrest. He came over here. We can't deport him, apparently, according to the Immigration Tribunal, because he might be arrested when he goes back for breaking the law there.
Sorry? Yes. Because what about the people that commit crimes here? They say to me all the time, well, you can't deport them because they've committed the crime here. Well, if he's committed the crime there, send him back.
Yeah, well, exactly. What are we doing? Are we just saying that anybody who's committed a crime somewhere else can come here to escape the justice in their own country? To hell with that. We've got another guy who said he didn't have his ID card. Therefore, because he's lost his ID card and his mobile phone, when he went back to Iraq, if they deported him back there, then he wouldn't be able to contact his family, and therefore he wouldn't be able to tell the authorities all the details he needed to get a new ID card, and therefore he wouldn't have access to healthcare and so on. So what did we do? We said, oh, well, in that case, you can stay here. These are people who are denied asylum, but are allowed to stay here for that reason. You know, the whole thing beggars belief. The British people are watching this with growing disbelief. I mean, I think they already are absolutely astounded. You know, our borders being breached every day. Our laws are being ignored. The justice system is an ass. And quite frankly, you know, the British state is not weak. It is just incompetent, badly led.
Well, I would only take issue with what you're saying there. The British state might not be weak, but it's a bit like the people who won't accept that the NHS is defunct and needs to be revamped. The British state looks bloody weak. The British state looks like it can be compromised. The British society, country, whatever, looks like it can be taken advantage of, and that's frightening to me.
We've talked about this before, Jeremy. Of course, what that does is it sends the signal to all of these people around the world who are thinking of coming here. You know, Britain's open. You can get into the UK. They're a soft touch. They'll let you stay even if you've committed crimes elsewhere. And so that's the signal we're sending out. That is part of the pull factor. Government policy, lack of policy, is actually attracting people to the United Kingdom. They're part of the problem. Now, when I say the state is strong, we have all the institutions. We have the policing function. We have the...
Do we though, H? I'm not trying to be... Henry, I'm not trying to be unfair.
Badly led. So badly led.
OK, so we have the functions, or we have the institutions, but you would agree with me that those very institutions, talk policing, talk justice, talk a health service, are being eroded by incompetent, weak-willed, lily-livered, woke crap. They are. They are. I saw a story. I heard a story. I was talking to somebody today. I won't go into specifics, but a guy went from a certain country, having left his wife and children, I'll say it, Nigeria, and went to Ireland. And he got interviewed. And they said, how long? He said, I've been here 5 months. You know, I'm escaping whatever. There's no war in Nigeria. And he said, you know, I'm not working. And I've come here because I'm gay. And in my country, I would be persecuted. And the woman said, but you're married. And he just ran off. And you know, we're in the middle of Pride Month. What does that do? People are using excuses. I think it's... I don't understand how people can't see through the BS, though. That's my problem.
Well, the thing is that, as far as I'm concerned, if you come somewhere to claim asylum, you should damn well be able to prove your case. But it's the other way round. The reality is that the courts say, well, if the UK can't prove that what this person is saying is a whole load of BS, then we've got to keep them here. We are making I say the state is strong because we've got the institutions. What we've not got is we've not got the leadership. We've not got the vision. We've got a whole bunch of muppets who are in charge of all of these institutions. The police are being politicised. The courts are being politicised, and we've got politicians who simply don't have the nous. They're just useless.
So I'll say to you what I said to Sir John Redwood. Have you heard about this interview with Sir Simon Case that Harry Cole's done? Never mind the ballots, in tomorrow's Sun newspaper. It's fascinating. He was, till 6 months ago, Henry, Sir Simon Case, the most decorated and senior civil servant. Before that, he'd worked in Number 10, Buckingham Palace and the spy world. Decorated establishment political manoeuvre, civil servant. Free of the shackles of that job, and you're going to say to me he should have done something with it, and I don't disagree with you. He said, Britain is teetering on a debt crisis crippled by a lack of growth and heaving under mass migration whilst facing threats of disorder at home and annihilation abroad. But politicians, Henry Bolton, are powerless to fundamentally change the country due to an overinflated, officious civil service and layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy. We've known that for years, and that's the head of the civil service.
Absolutely agree. But we've also got politicians who don't know how to tackle that problem because they don't have the breadth of experience. And I'm not talking about academics, I'm not talking about lawyers, I'm talking about actual, real statesman-like leaders. And so that's part of the reason we don't get this solved. Simon Case is absolutely spot on. I've seen it myself. I've seen director-level people from the Home Office, the Foreign Office, the Ministry of Defence. I've sat with them and talked to them about how to manage common security and defence post-Brexit. And I won't go into the detail, but I put certain suggestions to them. The answer is Well, there's no appetite for that in the UK. And that, what I was actually proposing was that the UK takes a lead, takes the initiative. And that is not ministers. Ministers are totally unaware, in my belief, that the civil service are blocking so much. There's a total inertia there. Now, what do we do about that? We've got to get leaders in who can cut through that. Not businessmen, not academics, not lawyers, but real, genuine leaders. And we haven't got them. That's a problem.
I thought it was really interesting. I've got to finish, but Sir John Redwood, I asked him when he was Wales Secretary, Environment Secretary, all that sort of thing, what did you do? And he said with Wales, there was a person who blatantly was going to object and be a problem to me, so I moved them out. I actually kept them on side by getting them a better job, but that's what I did. He said I would say to the department every single day, whatever you put in my way, I'm here to report to the British public in Parliament, and that's what you've got to do. Maybe it is down to the skill set. Maybe we are now surrounded by politicians who don't have any real-world experience. They all come and they do an MA in whatever, politics and whatever, and then they go and work in a think tank. But I'm like you. I crave a leader that doesn't care what crap's thrown at them legally, media-wise or whatever, or even their colleagues, but they believe in a with conviction about what they're saying, and they're going to do it at all costs, you know?
I think what we need is I agree entirely. But that politician, that leader, needs to be able to stand up on a daily basis and shame these people and say, this morning, I met with senior directors from the various government departments, and they're all sitting there telling me that they're not going to do this. Now, I don't have the power to sack them because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm doing this, and go public with it. Explain to the public why you're not doing this. But then you've got to have the humility, you've got to have the strength of character, you've got to have the courage, you've got to have all of those things to be able to do that. And I don't see anybody in senior politics in the United Kingdom ready to do that. And that's because they're all busy serving themselves, their parties, their next votes. I mean, they should be prepared to throw themselves onto, on.
I agree with you. Do you know what? I completely agree with you. It's all about legacy. It shouldn't be. It should be about commitment to what they believe. Henry Bolton, really appreciate it as ever. Talk Drive is on for 20 more minutes. 0344 499 1000. Text to 87222. We're coming back with a review of tomorrow's Sun newspaper. John Lucas, night news editor, next from the Sun.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
18 minutes to 7. Yeah, Ian Collins back tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. The legend that is Mike Graham. He will be here nice and early. Migrant of the day and liar of the day. Well, you're obviously, you know who that's going to be. Good evening to John Lucas, night news editor from the Current Bun. The Sun, how are we?
Hello, very well.
Feature we do now on Drive. Find out what's in tomorrow's paper. You've already heard Harry Cole, editor at large. I can actually officially reveal he's been renamed Large Editor. That's all it is. He's actually this large S. Anyway, tomorrow, great article. The interview with Sir Simon Case, who was, up until 6 months ago, the most senior civil servant in the UK. Eye-watering comments from him. It's too bloated, he says. Politicians can't move, he says. Other stuff in the paper tomorrow. More about Madeleine McCann. This is a story the Sun's followed in just for several, well, for years, but recently it's brought itself up again.
Yeah, that's right. So I was here last week when we got news that they were going to do this fresh search just outside Praia de Luz. That went on for 3 days. Now, they threw us a bit of a curveball because the German police had obtained all these warrants for different areas that they might search. In the end, they really focused down on this one sort of former campsite area where we knew Bruckner stayed, but yeah, at the end of it, Portuguese sources were saying nothing's been found.
And it was sort of labelled a flop, wasn't it?
It's a flop. It's, you know, this morning, very surprised to hear this, that German police actually did obtain samples of what's described as bones or bone fragments plus fibres, fabrics, which have been sent back to Germany, and they are going to be assessed.
Help me out here, right? So, because I don't know the story. Well, I do obviously know the story, but Portuguese police said nothing's happened.
Yeah.
German police, who are currently holding Mr. Christian Bruckner, is it? Yeah. They apparently are saying they found tiny fragments which they speculate could have links to Maddie. Are you telling me that the German and Portuguese police aren't working together on this?
Weirdly, these European agencies aren't actually in step with each other 100%.
Well, that might be why it's taken 20 years to get an answer.
Well, absolutely, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
And I think that there's a bureaucratic process as well, which hasn't helped.
Well, in Europe,
exactly. But we're pressing them tonight to sort of get to the bottom of it.
Because it's interesting, it's in Portugal, and the Portuguese police are going, there's nothing here, it's been a flop, and the Germans are, that's really interesting.
Well, the Portuguese couldn't solve it in the first place, that's the thing, and now the Germans are trying. There's this race against time to obtain more evidence against Bruckner because he can walk out in September. So this
and there was
really
cynicism, let's be honest, after it was labelled a flop last week, that this was a PR stunt to simply try and get evidence to nail this guy because they've run out of options. So that's a story the Sun will follow. This is brilliant, by the way. The Rolling Stones, how old are they all? About 140, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Mick and Keith are 81.
How, 81 and he's still strutting his stuff? We had a woman on the show yesterday who went to school with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when she was 8. He lived across the road in little grey shorts. He was 7. It was brilliant. It was fantastic. She called Maureen. The bloke that answered the phone spelled her name M-O-R-O-O-N, which was moron, which is a bit embarrassing. But it's true. The Rolling Stones are working on a new album after dropping plans for a massive summer tour because they couldn't get on bleeding stage, any of them, with their Zimmer frames.
Yeah, that's it. Well, we in the Sun newsroom, we think we work very long hours. These guys, first album's out in 1964.
That was before I was born. That's 61 years, man.
It's unbelievable. It's I think this will be their 25th or 26th studio album, depends how you count them.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago they had Hackney Diamonds came out, and that was their first in 18 years, and everyone was stunned about that. And now the Rolling Stone fans are going to be treated to yet another
They've
album.
laid down 13 songs and discussions over a release date for their 25th studio album, first album since 1964, which is fantastic. You can follow that in the Sun. Also tomorrow, this is brilliant, Robocabs. I have a problem with this, and Orion looks at me like I've landed from Mars. Self-driving taxis will be on Britain's roads. That's surely got to be bleeding dangerous, hasn't it?
Well, they work very well in America. So this is Uber is going
Everything works well in America. It's just in England it doesn't.
Yeah, well, the problem is America's only, what is it, 200 years old. All their roads are laid out like grids.
Yeah.
Obviously, in England, we're very different. So initially, there was going to be a bit of legislation that would allow this to happen in 2027, but it's been brought forward. So next spring, we'll have driverless taxis on our roads. Now, how are they going to handle the hanger lane gyratory? How are they going to handle?
Can I just be really honest with you, right?
Yeah.
Because I've always been. I'm not sure I would want to. This is me being deadly serious. Love to know what you think very quickly on text 87222. I'm not sure I want to get into a cab or a car without a driver. I think it would freak me out. What do you think quickly, people? Is that right or wrong? 87222. Is it the future? Ryan, would you get in a driverless cab? I'd freak out. No, that's true. He says he wouldn't get one that costed money anyway. It's tight. You're right, though. You know, roundabouts, road. I don't know. Would you get in one?
Boy races on the A13. That's my journey every day.
Is it? Would you get in one?
I'd rather not. I prefer to drive myself, and if there's a taxi driver, obviously, that's a chance for a little bit of a chat as well.
Well, Peter Kay made that famous, didn't he? When he gets into the cab, been busy. Say that to every taxi.
Absolutely, yeah.
What time you been on to? Unbelievable. But yeah, I'm a bit weird about that. Driverless cabs.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And my favourite, Amy, what's with the long face? My favourite story here is horses. This is in the paper tomorrow. Why the long list of faces? Horses have their own language with more than 800 facial expressions, scientists. How the hell does a scientist find out that a horse has got 800 facial expressions? What a lovely lie. How does that work then?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is scientists, boffins at Aberystwyth University. They got
to do.
Facial recognition technology. And so you've heard of horse whisperers, but this shows us that actually you don't have to be a horse whisperer. You can actually look at them, and depending on how they're moving their ears, I wish I could waggle my ears because I do.
Can you waggle your ears?
I can't. But
Horsey McHorseface. I love this. This is brilliant.
But they can express sadness. They can even be playful, joking between each other. Depends on how they move their ears. Their nose.
Horses can joke with each other just by
horsing around.
Very good. I mean, I've had horses all my life. It could help vets detect pain in horses. That's actually really good and change how we interact with horses. It could also help, in terms of horse racing, when you try and buy a racehorse, you could actually tell whether it's crap or not, because you could go, are you any good? And it'll go, or a big smile. But honestly, just one thing, because this is what I love, and I love the Sun for this. Horses have their own language, 800... Aberystwyth University has invested money over a period of months for a bunch of people to study horse faces.
Yeah, that's progress. That's science.
Is it?
Apparently.
It's a great story for the Sun. I'm just wondering whether there is better stuff. So listen tomorrow, peeps. Out at 10 o'clock tonight in the stands, of course, the Sun tomorrow. You can get it online. More on Madeline McCann. It's oldie rock and roll. The Rolling Stones' first studio album in... for a while, 25th studio album on the way. There will be self-drive Ubers, not going in there, and horses have 800 facial expressions, more than my wife. I didn't say it. Don't. Do you know what my dad used to call my mother? What? The War Office, the enemy. Go and see if dinner's ready. Ask the enemy. And the big news as well. Harry Cole. That interview was Sir Simon Case. John Lucas, thank you so much. So night news editor. Somebody texted me after you left last time. Do you work all night?
Well, I do my best.
That means he finishes at 10 and goes down the bar. 10 to 7 on Tour Drive.
So on the one hand, we keep hiking up energy prices with this religion of net zero, this lunatic end of times religion, which says that unless we cut carbon by a certain amount in 10 years, we're all going to fry in an apocalypse. Completely untrue. So they've devoted themselves to this cult, which has the effect of raising those prices. And then they have to bring in this allowance to help older people pay for the basics of life. Yeah. And then they take that allowance away. I mean, as you said earlier on, this is down to the Tories as well as Labour, but we are ruled by dumb people.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. It's time for me to sell a competition to you. We're giving you the chance to win. I'm joking about it's fantastic FIFA Club World Cup final tickets thanks to our friends at DAZN. We know what happens at DAZN. They have a great time. Here's everything you need to know. This is brilliant. Have a listen. Go.
Hi, it's Jim White here. Here at TalkSport, we're gearing up for the Club World Cup in the United States. And to celebrate, we've got 2 tickets to the final in New York on July the 13th to give away. We'll sort flights, accommodation, and give you $5,000 spending money to spend however you like. 18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. All you have to do to enter is text the word football to 83338 by the 13th of June at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Club World Cup Final Prize Draw, P.O. Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on June the 18th.
This is a TalkSport limited competition run on TalkSport Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
I do like that voiceover at the end. Hello, Mike Graham. How are you? 5 to 7.
Very nice to see you, Jeremy. I wasn't really expecting to talk to you, but, here I am.
Yeah, well, we haven't got him on screen, ladies and gentlemen, because he's just currently... he's very busy and out and about, but I just had to grab him. Very quickly, did you see that story about the Sun, about horses have 800 expressions?
I did. I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, what would you have to say to somebody who's got a face like a horse's arse? I mean, is that particularly easy to read? I don't know.
God, we've got some experiences. The reason I wanted you on, apart from that, I spent my entire time telling everybody how brilliant the show is. Lie of the day is brilliant. Migrant of the... Have you read about that guy today, the migrant, the Iraqi, who can't go back because he had an affair? He was sleeping with the colonel's wife, and he says if he goes back to the Middle East, he'll probably have his bits cut off. So he needs to stay here because he's been sleeping with somebody else's wife, and he'll be in trouble.
Why do we even care? Why do we even care if he gets his bits cut off? Fine, I don't care if they execute him. Honestly, just get rid of these people. What are they doing here? We heard this week that one of the guys who funded old Greta Thunberg's trip to Gaza is a member of Hamas, or has been a sympathiser of Hamas. He's living in London. Why is he living in London? Let's get rid of these people.
By the way, breaking news on Greta. She's on an airline. I can't tell you which one, but she's in economy, sat next to the bog on the way back to France, which is
fantastic. I mean, imagine the carbon footprint of that. She'd never get over it, would she?
She's been all over the place, isn't she? She needs to go to school. And let's not forget the boat was, in fact, powered by diesel. Do you know when you do 3 hours like I do, and I sit here and I rant and I vent, and in the end I think I need to speak to Mike because I'm the only one, but it's like oxygen. I love you. Tomorrow, 6 a.m, you've got an absolute exclusive. Tell us more, bud.
We have. Ed Butler is coming on. Ed Butler is the former commanding officer of 22 SAS, right? He was in charge of the SAS after 9/11. He was brigade commander of 16 Air Assault Brigade in Afghanistan. He was literally the guy hunting Osama bin Laden. He's got a lot to say about why our military people are being prosecuted by this ghastly Labour government, why veterans of Northern Ireland are being dragged through the courts because of things that they did for their country. He's got an awful lot to say about that. He'll also have a lot to say about Keir Starmer and the war footing. It's the first time, Jeremy, I believe, that a former SAS commander has ever spoken on national broadcast radio and television.
How did you manage to do that, me old son?
I know a few people, man. You know, occasionally call in the old favours. You know what I mean? People owe me.
Listen, let me just repeat what he just said. Mike Graham, tomorrow morning, 6 a.m, Ed Butler, for the first time ever on British broadcast, the former SAS commander that ran the SAS after 9/11, right? He will talk about war crimes, government prosecution, because that's appalling, the way the government are saying, isn't it, Mikey, right, to veterans and people who fought for this war. He's saying to them, you know, we're going to take you to court. That's appalling by anybody's standards, right?
Look, the SAS are employed to kill people. That's their job. It might not be very nice. You might not like it. If you sit in your little, you know, terraced house worth £4 million in Islington and your next door neighbour's Keir Starmer and somebody keeps throwing firebombs at him, you know, you might think, oh, that's not very nice. The SAS are there to kill people. That's their job. They do it very well. They should not be prosecuted for doing it sometime 20, 30 years down the road. I'm sorry.
I need to introduce you to a friend of yours. Kevin O'Sullivan's walked in. He's only ever come in when you're on. He usually doesn't bloody well bother.
Hello, mate. All right?
All right, Kev.
Yeah, I'm good.
Kev and I will be hooking up tomorrow for another Thought Police podcast, so I shall see him then.
Good, and we'll see you tomorrow for Plank. Thank you, Mikey. Enjoy your evening. Mike Graham with that exclusive. Kev O'Sullivan, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm enthralled by this Simon Case exclusive. Have you heard about this?
What's he done now?
He's done an interview with Harry Cole, never mind about it, it's all over the Sun tomorrow, when he basically says this country is being completely downtrodden and unable to move because of layers of bureaucracy caused by the blob. Which he was in charge of.
Which he was in charge of. Maybe he could throw through parties, you know, because he's good at